Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. After the main character dies, he wakes up inside of Marvel as the leader of the Foundation from SCP. What will he do when SCP show up in the world of Marvel? What will he do against godlike SCP figures?
By evening, the prototypes were set. Not built, not yet but designed. Blueprints hovered in the air, glowing faint, pieces shifting, ready for assembly. Stark leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. You realize this is going to take time, right? I'm good, but I'm not Santa Claus. You'll get your toys, but don't expect a miracle overnight. I smirked, clapping him lightly on the shoulder. Stark, you're the closest thing to a miracle this city's got. Take your time. We'll hold the line until you're ready. He shot me a quick glance, then chuckled. You really don't quit, do you? I grinned wide. Not my style. When I left the tower, the deal was sealed. Stark would build. We'd fight. And together, maybe just maybe we'd make sure the next monster didn't get a free meal. Chapter 28, Ice and Teeth. The morning started quiet. The base hummed like it always did, soldiers drilling, engines rumbling in the motor pool, scientists shuffling between labs. I sat in the control room with a cup of coffee, boots propped up on the console, staring at the monitor feed of Banner's wing. He was there with his team, watching 239 sit silently on her cot. She hadn't moved since yesterday. Then it hit. The ding. Sharp, clear, inside my head. I froze, lowering the cup slowly, my grin slipping away. New SCP detected. Location, the Arctic. Near frozen wreckage. My stomach tightened. Wreckage. Arctic. I didn't need a map to know where. The ice where Captain America slept. I leaned forward, setting the cup aside, my grin returning faintly. Well, looks like we've got a field trip. I gave the order within the hour. 3 squads prepped immediately, 30 soldiers in total, plus my original 10. Their rifles were checked, suppressant canisters filled, reinforced nets coiled tight. Engineers loaded containment crates onto the transports, their steel surfaces gleaming cold under the hangar lights. I walked the motor pool as they worked, hands in my pockets, grin tugging at my lips. Bundle up, boys. We're going somewhere colder than your ex-wife's heart. No one answered. Of course they didn't. The jets roared to life. Massive transports, reinforced for long-haul flights. We loaded in, the ramp clanging shut behind us. Inside, the air smelled like oil and steel, the hum of engines vibrating through the floor. Soldiers strapped in tight, rifles resting against their legs, silent as always. I smirked faintly, buckling myself in. Hope you all packed your mittens. The flight stretched long. Hours of nothing but sky and cloud. The farther north we flew, the darker the world became. The blue gave way to endless white, ice stretching farther than the eye could see. I stood at the cockpit door, staring through the windshield at the frozen wasteland below. The sun was a pale disk, weak against the sheets of snow and jagged icebergs. The wind howled even at altitude, rattling faintly against the hull. Beautiful, isn't it? I said lightly, glancing back at the pilot. He didn't answer. Figures. We landed on a flat sheet of ice, the transport's engines kicking up snow in violent gusts. The ramp lowered with a hiss, spilling freezing air into the hold. My breath fogged instantly, sharp against my lips. Boots hit ice in perfect rhythm. Soldiers spread in formation, rifles up, eyes scanning the white expanse. The horizon was nothing but endless frost, jagged peaks of ice breaking through the snow like teeth. I stepped off the ramp last, pulling my coat tighter, grin tugging faintly at my lips. Welcome to the land of no Wi-Fi. Try not to freeze before the monster finds us. The wind whipped across the ice, sharp and constant. It didn't take long to find the wreckage. A few miles out, half buried under snow, jagged metal rose from the ice. The shattered skeleton of a plane. The cold had preserved it, its body still intact despite decades frozen. I recognized it immediately. The Valkyrie. The one Steve Rogers had gone down with. My chest tightened faintly. Somewhere under all this ice, the first Avenger slept. But he wasn't the reason we were here. The ding hadn't lied. There was an SCP in the ice. And I knew which one. SCP-354-6. The Ice Creature. A predator born from frozen depths, drawn to movement, vicious and near impossible to kill. But it had a weakness: heat. Burn it long enough, and it stayed down. I exhaled slowly, grin fading into something sharper. All right, boys. Keep your eyes open. We're not alone out here. The first attack came fast. One of the soldiers near the wreckage froze, his rifle snapping up toward the snowdrift. The ground shifted. White powder spilled in waves as something massive burst upward. The creature towered over us, its body white as the ice, jagged spikes rising from its back. Its mouth gaped wide, rows of teeth snapping shut with a sound like cracking stone. Frost curled from its hide, the air itself colder around it. It roared, the sound sharp and cutting against the howling wind. My soldiers didn't flinch. Rifles rose, safeties clicked off. Suppressants! I shouted. The air filled with hissing mist. Clouds of chemical spray coated the creature's hide, clinging to its spikes, dripping off in pale rivulets. It shrieked, rearing back, frost scattering in waves. Heavy fire. Launchers thumped, rockets streaking across the ice. Explosions rolled across its chest, flames licking up its sides. The heat made it scream louder, its body writhing, claws gouging deep trenches in the snow. I raised my rifle, grinning faintly. Guess you don't like the sauna, hey? Bullets peppered its hide, flames burning brighter as more rockets slammed home. The ice around it melted in rivulets, steam rising in thick clouds. The creature staggered, roaring, claws thrashing. Hold the line! I shouted. Don't let it push through. My soldiers braced, firing in unison, suppressants spraying thick and steady. The creature shrieked again, its body shuddering under the heat. Finally, with one last roar, it collapsed, its massive body slamming into the snow. Steam poured off its hide, its spikes cracking under the heat. It wasn't dead. Not permanently. But it was down. The soldiers moved quickly. Nets flew wide, wrapping around its limbs. Suppressants hissed in steady bursts, coating its body until it steamed like boiling water. Engineers rolled the containment crate forward, its reinforced steel gleaming under the pale sun. I smirked faintly, lowering my rifle. Box it up, boys. Dinner's over. The creature was dragged inch by inch into the crate. Its roars weakened as the doors slammed shut, locks hissing tight. The crate shuddered once, then went still. Captured. I turned back toward the wreckage, my grin faint. Snow whipped across the ice, covering the jagged skeleton of the Valkyrie. Somewhere below, Steve Rogers waited. We hadn't come for him. Not today. But I knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. The transports were loaded within the hour. The crate was secured in reinforced chains, soldiers strapped in silent as always. Engines roared, cutting through the frozen air as the base grew smaller behind us. I leaned back in my seat, smirk tugging faintly at my lips. Well, that was brisk. Next time, let's pick somewhere with a beach. No one answered. Figures. Chapter 29, the man in the ice. The transport's engine still hummed steady when I felt it. The ding. Reward confirmed, SCP-354-6 sold. Points credited. 10,000. I leaned back in the seat, a grin spreading across my face. Well, boys, that's what I call a good haul. One angry popsicle traded for 10,000 shiny points. Drinks on me when we get home. My soldiers sat silent as always. Not even a chuckle. I sighed, shaking my head. Tough crowd. But then, the comms cracked. Commander, movement at the wreckage. I straightened, grin fading. Define movement. Thermal spike. The ice is breaking. My pulse jumped. The Valkyrie. The ice. Captain America. I shot up from my seat, slinging my rifle over my shoulder. Turn this bird around. We're not done yet. Engines roared louder as the transport banked, the icy horizon spinning in the viewports. The frozen wreckage of the Valkyrie loomed back into view, jagged steel half buried under snowdrifts. And there just beyond it the ice was cracking. Sheets of frost split with sharp reports, snow collapsing into the sea in great plumes. Steam rose faintly as the water churned below, dark against the endless white. Then he emerged. A figure half buried in ice, frozen stiff, shield still strapped to his arm. His chest barely moved under the frost, but it moved. He was alive. Steve Rogers. Captain America. I exhaled slowly, grin creeping back onto my face. Well, isn't that something? The guest of honor's awake. The transport hovered low, ramp lowering with a hiss. Boots thundered against the ice as my soldiers deployed in perfect formation, rifles raised, eyes scanning the horizon. That's when I saw it. A black dot against the sky. Small at first, but growing fast. Engines. A shield Quinjet. I clicked my radio. They're coming. We've got one shot. Secure him. Now. My soldiers surged forward, boots pounding against the ice. Two of them dropped to their knees beside Rogers, their gloves chipping frost away from his chest, checking vitals. His skin was pale, his breath shallow, but it was there. He stirred faintly, groaning under the frost. His eyes fluttered open. Blue, sharp even through the haze of ice. They flicked from the soldiers to the wreckage to me. Where? His voice was rough, strained. I grinned, crouching down beside him. Welcome back, Cap. You've been on ice for a while. Don't worry, we've got mittens. He blinked slowly, disoriented. His gaze shifted again to the soldiers, to the transport behind me. Confusion deepened in his eyes. You're not. He muttered weakly. You're not Army. I chuckled. Good eye. No, we're not. We're the Foundation. And right now, you're coming with us. His brows furrowed faintly, but he didn't have the strength to argue. Not yet. The Quinjet was closer now, engines thundering across the ice. Its shape grew sharp against the pale horizon, floodlights cutting through the snow. I straightened, my voice sharp. Load him. Fast. My soldiers lifted Rogers carefully, carrying him toward the transport. His shield clattered faintly against the ice, still strapped to his arm. He groaned again, head lolling, but didn't resist. The Quinjet was minutes out. Floodlights swept across the ice, locking onto the wreckage, then our transport. Shield craft inbound, one of my soldiers reported calmly. I grinned faintly, raising my rifle. Then let's make this quick. The ramp hissed shut the moment Rogers was loaded. Engines roared, the transport lifting from the ice in a burst of snow and steam. The Quinjet swung lower, its guns swiveling toward us. "Commander, they're locking on." I smirked. "Yeah, they'll think twice about firing when they realize what we've got in the back." The transport surged higher, engines straining. The Quinjet shadowed us for a moment, its floodlights glaring against the hull. Then, slowly, it broke off, circling back toward the wreckage. I exhaled, grin widening. "That's right. Go home, Fury. This one's ours." Inside, Rogers lay strapped to a reinforced stretcher, frost melting off his uniform. His eyes opened again slowly, clearer this time. He scanned the room, confusion sharp in his gaze. "Who are you people?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I crouched beside him, smirking. "Like I said, we're the Foundation. We keep the monsters in their cages, the lights on, and the world spinning. You're part of that world, Cap. Which means keeping you safe is our job now." His brow furrowed, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "Where's S.H.I.E.L.D.? I chuckled. "Late to the party. Don't worry, we'll take good care of you." He didn't look convinced. But he was too weak to argue. I leaned back, smirk tugging wider. "Get some rest, Cap. You'll need it." The flight home was long, the hum of engines filling the hold. Rogers slept most of the way, his breathing steady now, the frost fully melted from his uniform. His shield rested at his side, gleaming even under the dim lights. My soldiers sat silent in their rows, rifles resting across their laps. The base grew closer with every mile, hidden beneath New York's concrete and steel. And with it came the questions. What would S.H.I.E.L.D. do when they realized we'd taken Captain America? And what would Rogers do when he realized he wasn't in their hands? Chapter 30, A Soldier Out of Time. The base was quiet when we landed. Engines wound down in the motor pool, the heavy ramp lowering with a hiss. Cold air rushed in, carrying with it the last bite of Arctic frost. My soldiers filed out first, boots pounding in perfect rhythm. They carried rifles, gear, crates, everything but the stretcher. That stayed with me. Steve Rogers lay strapped to it, his chest rising and falling steady now, frost melted away. His uniform was still the one he'd gone into the ice with, torn, faded, stars and stripes dulled by decades. His shield rested against the wall, still gleaming like new. I stepped down the ramp last, my grin faint. "Home sweet home, Cap. A little different from Brooklyn, but you'll get used to it." He stirred faintly at my voice, his eyelids twitching. He wasn't fully awake yet. Good. Gave me time. We moved him to the medical wing. Sterile white lights glowed overhead, equipment humming quiet in the background. Scientists and medics stood ready, their clipboards tucked tight, eyes locked on Rogers. "Vitals?" I asked, smirking faintly. One of the medics answered quickly. "Stable. Low core temperature, but rising. Minor frost damage. No long-term issues expected." I chuckled softly. Guy takes a 70-year nap and walks out with better vitals than half my soldiers. Not bad. The medic didn't smile. Figures. I stayed through the night. Sat in the corner of the room, arms folded, watching as the medics worked. They thought him slow, careful, monitoring every number on the screen. His breathing deepened over time, his color returning. His hands twitched now and then, like he was dreaming. Finally, as dawn broke over New York above us, his eyes opened. Blue. Clear. Strong, even now. He blinked slowly, staring up at the ceiling. His lips parted, his voice hoarse. "Where am I?" I pushed up from the chair, stepping closer, my grin soft. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Cap. You're in good hands." His head turned toward me, his gaze sharpening. He scanned me up and down my coat, my stance, the silent soldiers posted at the door. "You're not army," he said flatly. I chuckled. Sharp as ever. "No, not army. Something else. Name's not important yet. What matters is that we pulled you out of that ice before S.H.I.E.L.D. could." His brows furrowed at the word. "S.H.I.E.L.D." I smirked faintly. "We'll get to them later. For now, let's keep it simple. We're the Foundation. We protect Earth from threats most people don't even know exist. Monsters, creatures, things you wouldn't believe if I showed you. That's our job. And now that you're awake, it's part of yours too." He frowned, struggling to sit up. The medic moved to stop him, but I waved them off. He was stubborn. Always would be. He braced his elbows against the bed, pushing himself upright slowly. His gaze locked on me again, sharp despite the exhaustion. "I fight for my country," he said firmly. I grinned wide. "Good. Because your country needs you. The whole world needs you. But the rules are different now. Enemies don't wear uniforms, don't fly flags. Sometimes they don't even look human. That's where we come in. We fight the fights no one else can. And I'd be lying if I said we don't want you with us." He didn't answer right away. He stared at me, searching my face for something truth, maybe. Finally, he asked quietly, "Why me?" I chuckled, leaning back against the wall. "Because you're Steve Rogers. You fought when you were weak, you fought when you were strong, and you fought when the world told you not to. That's the kind of man I want standing beside me when things get ugly." His jaw tightened faintly. He looked down at his hands, flexing his fingers slowly. Decades in ice, and they still moved steady. He looked back up, his voice sharp again. "If I'm with you, what happens to S.H.I.E.L.D.? I smirked. "They'll come knocking. They already tried. But here's the thing, Cap, they answer to governments, politicians, agendas. We don't. We answer only to the mission, protect the world. That's it." He stared at me a long moment, then sighed softly. "I don't trust you," he admitted quietly. I grinned. "Good. You shouldn't. Not yet. But you'll see soon enough. Actions speak louder than promises, right?" That got the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Almost a smile. The next days were slow. Steve stayed in the medical wing, regaining his strength. The medics ran tests, recorded data, checked him from head to toe. His metabolism was stronger than anything they'd seen, his recovery near instant compared to a normal man. I visited every morning. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just sat in silence. He asked questions: where he was, what year it was, what had changed. I answered lightly, teasing where I could. "Year's 2010, I said one morning, leaning against the wall. "World's got Wi-Fi, phones in pockets, and way too many superhero movies. You'd hate half of them." His brows furrowed. "Movies?" "Yeah," I chuckled. "Long story. We'll binge later." Another day, he asked about the war. "Did we win?" I smirked faintly. "Yeah, Cap. You won. Nazis lost, Hydra scattered. The world moved on. Doesn't mean it got safer, though." That answer sat with him for a while. On the fourth day, I brought him his shield. It gleamed even under the sterile lights, unmarred by time. His hands shook slightly as he took it, running his fingers across the star. He looked up at me, his voice quiet but firm. "Why give this back?" I smirked. "Because it's yours. Always has been. Besides, what kind of idiot tries to keep Captain America's shield from him?" That got me the faintest smile. Real, this time. By the end of the week, he was on his feet. Still weak, still adjusting, but steady. I walked him through the base slowly, labs buzzing with scientists, soldiers drilling in the barracks, containment wings humming with quiet menace. He watched it all carefully, his brow furrowed. "This isn't an army," he muttered. I smirked. "It's better." He didn't argue. That night, he stood in the control room with me, staring at the glowing monitors. His reflection was sharp against the glass, shield strapped to his back. Finally, he spoke. "If I stay with you, I need to know something." I raised an eyebrow. "Shoot." His voice was steady. "Are we protecting people? Or just fighting monsters?" I smirked faintly, my tone serious now. "Both. Monsters come first, but people are always the point. No civilians get left behind. That's the rule. That's the promise." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then I'll stay. For now." I grinned wide, clapping him lightly on the shoulder. "Good to have you, Cap. Welcome to the Foundation." Chapter 31, Drills in the Barracks. The barracks smelled of oil, sweat, and gunmetal. Boots pounded against the reinforced floor in perfect rhythm. Soldiers marched in formation, rifles at their sides, their movements silent except for the thud of their steps. Lines formed, broke, and reformed with mechanical precision under the cold glare of the overhead lights. At the far end of the hall, Steve Rogers stood watching. His arms were crossed, his shield strapped to his back, his jaw set tight. His eyes followed every motion of the soldiers with a sharpness that hadn't dulled, not even after decades frozen in ice. I leaned casually against the wall beside him, smirking faintly. "Not bad, huh? You should see them when I'm not looking. Almost as sharp." Steve didn't smile. His gaze stayed on the soldiers. "They're disciplined. But they don't move like an army unit." I chuckled softly. "That's because they're not. Their foundation. Different playbook, same results. We don't shout, we don't chant, and we don't waste breath. Every order's silent. Every man follows without question." His brow furrowed faintly, but he didn't argue. I pushed off the wall, clapping my hands once. The echo rang down the barracks. "All right, boys. Time to show off. Meet your new sparring partner, Captain America." Every head turned in unison. Not a word. Not a flicker of expression. Steve shifted slightly, his stance steady, his voice low. "They know who I am." I smirked. "They know enough. Rest is just icing on the cake." He looked at me sharply. "And you didn't ask me first." I grinned wider. Surprise builds character. That earned me the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. The first drill was hand to hand. 2 soldiers stepped forward at my signal, their rifles slung, their stances low. They circled Steve carefully, their boots quiet against the floor. Steve dropped into a stance without hesitation, shoulders square, fists loose, eyes sharp. "Go," I called. The soldiers moved fast, striking in tandem. One swung low, the other high, their motions practiced and precise. Steve blocked the first, twisted under the second, and swept a leg out clean. The soldier hit the ground hard, rolling instantly back to his feet. Steve's movements were fluid, efficient, every strike clean. But the soldiers didn't falter. They pressed him again and again, their attacks silent, coordinated, relentless. For minutes, the room echoed with the sound of fists against flesh, boots against tile, bodies hitting the floor. Steve held his ground, his breath steady, his strikes controlled. He didn't overpower them, he matched them, step for step, move for move. Finally, I clapped my hands again. Enough! The soldiers froze instantly, stepping back in unison. Steve straightened slowly, his chest rising and falling steady, sweat glistening faintly on his brow. He glanced at me, his voice low. "They're good. Real good." I smirked. "Told you. They don't flinch." He didn't argue. The next drill was firearms. We moved to the range, the sharp scent of gunpowder filling the air. Targets lined the far wall, glowing faintly under the lights. Soldiers took their places, rifles snapping up in perfect unison. Steve stood in the middle, his shield strapped to his arm now. He glanced at the rifles, his brow furrowing faintly. "These aren't standard issue," he muttered. I grinned. "Nope. Custom work. Stronger, faster, smarter. Courtesy of a certain genius billionaire you might have heard of." His eyes flicked toward me sharply. "Stark?" I smirked. "The younger one. You'll like him. Eventually." That earned me a flat look. I waved a hand. "All right, let's see it. Show the boys how it's done." Steve raised his shield, his stance steady. At my signal, the soldiers opened fire. The room filled with the crack of rifles, bullets streaking downrange in controlled bursts. Steve moved with practiced ease, his shield snapping up to deflect round after round. Every ricochet was precise, controlled, as if he'd never stopped training. His eyes stayed sharp, his breath calm, his movements fluid. When the last rifle clicked empty, he lowered the shield slowly. Not a scratch. The soldiers reloaded in silence, their eyes steady on him. I chuckled softly. "Not bad, Cap. Still got it." He glanced at me, his voice low. "You're training them to fight things that can't be stopped with bullets." I smirked faintly. "Exactly. That's why we train like this. Every shot, every strike, every move, it has to be perfect. Because sometimes, that's the only edge we've got." He didn't answer. But I saw the respect in his eyes. The final drill was teamwork. The soldiers formed two squads at my signal, splitting the room in half. Steve stood between them, his shield strapped tight, his jaw set. "This one's simple," I said cheerfully. "Move with them. Follow their lead. No talking, no shouting, just instinct. Think you can keep up?" His eyes narrowed faintly. "Try me." The drill began. The squads moved as one, rifles up, boots pounding in unison. Steve fell in beside them without hesitation, his shield raised, his stance low. They flowed through the barracks like water, clearing corners, covering flanks, advancing and retreating with mechanical precision. And Steve matched them. Every step, every motion, every strike of his shield fell into rhythm with theirs. He didn't slow them down, didn't break the line. He adapted instantly, his instincts as sharp as theirs, his movements seamless. When the drill ended, the squads froze in formation, rifles lowered. Steve stood in the center, his chest heaving faintly, his shield still raised. He glanced at me, his voice quiet but firm. "They're disciplined. Different from the army, but disciplined." I grinned wide. "Told you. They're the best. And now they've got you." He didn't argue. That night, we sat in the control room together. The glow of the monitors lit the room, maps and data scrolling across the screens. My soldiers drilled below us, their boots pounding in steady rhythm. Steve leaned against the railing, his shield strapped to his back, his gaze steady on the monitors. Finally, he spoke. "They'll follow you anywhere." I smirked. "That's the idea." He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. And you want me to do the same? I chuckled softly. No, Cap. I don't want you to follow me. I want you to lead with me. 2 heads, 1 mission. Protect the world. He studied me a long moment. Then he nodded once, slow. We'll see. I grinned wide. Fair enough. Chapter 32, A Scientist and a Soldier. The base was humming when I found Steve the next morning. He was already awake, already moving, already dressed in one of the simple uniforms we'd issued him: black fatigues, boots polished to a shine, shield slung across his back like it belonged there. Which, of course, it did. He was in the training hall again, sparring with 3 soldiers at once. I leaned casually in the doorway, arms folded, watching him weave between them. His movements were clean, sharp, efficient. Every strike with the shield was measured, every step precise. He didn't waste a breath. When he dropped the last man with a clean sweep, I clapped my hands once. Not bad, Cap. You keep this up, I might have to start paying you. He turned toward me, sweat glistening on his brow, his chest rising and falling steady. I'm not here for a paycheck. I smirked. Figures. Good thing I wasn't serious. He shook his head faintly, but there was the barest hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. I straightened, my tone shifting. Come on. Got someone I want you to meet. His brows furrowed faintly. Who? You'll see, I said cheerfully. Think of it as a meet and greet. Soldier meets scientist. We walked the corridors in silence at first. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, soldiers passing in formation, scientists moving with clipboards and data pads. Steve's eyes took in everything: every hallway, every guard post, every camera tucked into the corners. He didn't say anything, but I knew he was memorizing the layout. Soldier's instinct. Finally, he spoke. This place, it's efficient. Too efficient. Everyone's moving like clockwork. I smirked. That's the idea. Monsters don't wait for us to tie our shoes. He glanced at me. You keep calling them monsters. I chuckled softly. Because that's what they are. You'll see soon enough. He didn't reply, but his jaw tightened slightly. We reached the reinforced wing. The doors here were thicker, the guards sharper, their rifles cradled tight. The air felt heavier somehow, colder under the lights. Steve's gaze sharpened. This isn't a barracks. Nope, I said, smirking faintly. Welcome to the lab wing. More brains than brawn down here. Don't worry, they're harmless. Most of the time. That earned me a look, but he followed without a word. We stopped outside a wide observation window. Behind the glass sat SCP-239. She was perched on her cot, small hands folded in her lap, eyes distant as always. Banner stood at the console with his team, his posture hunched, his face pale under the lights. His eyes flicked between the monitors and the girl, his fingers adjusting his glasses every few minutes. Steve froze. His eyes locked on the child first, then shifted to Banner. Confusion crossed his face, then suspicion. That's a kid, he said quietly. Yep, I said, smirking faintly. That's the scientist. Don't worry, we're not putting him in a cage. Steve shot me a sharp look. You know what I mean. I sighed, my tone sharpening. She's not just a kid, Cap. She's dangerous. Stronger than anything you've seen. Banner's here to keep her calm, keep her safe, keep everyone else safe. And he's the best man for the job. Steve didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. I opened the door. Banner glanced up as we stepped inside. His eyes flicked to me first, then to Steve. For a moment, his posture stiffened, his breath catching. "Steve Rogers," he said quietly. Steve frowned faintly. "You know me?" Banner nodded once, adjusting his glasses. "Everybody knows you. You're a hero." Steve shifted uncomfortably, his gaze lowering for a moment. "That was a long time ago." I smirked. "Don't let him fool you, Doc. He's still got it. Saw him knock 3 of my men flat this morning without breaking a sweat." Banner's lips twitched faintly, almost a smile. He turned back to Steve. "You're awake now. That's what matters." Steve studied him carefully. "And you are?" "Bruce Banner," he said softly. "Scientist. Physicist. I work here now." Steve's brows furrowed. "You don't look like a soldier." Banner shook his head quickly. "I'm not." I clapped a hand on Banner's shoulder, grinning. "Don't let the modesty fool you. He's worth 10 soldiers when it counts." Banner flinched slightly under my hand, but didn't argue. We stood by the console together, the glow of monitors lighting our faces. On the screens, 239 sat still, her gaze distant. Steve's voice was low. "Why is there a child here?" Banner hesitated. He glanced at me, then back at Steve. His voice was careful, measured. "Because she's not just a child. She's different. Strong. If she wanted to, she could reshape the world around her. But she doesn't. Not yet. Our job is to keep it that way." Steve's jaw tightened. "And you keep her in a cage." Banner's voice grew sharper. "To keep everyone safe." Steve didn't argue immediately. He looked through the glass again, his eyes on the girl. She didn't look back. Finally, he spoke. "I don't like it." I smirked faintly. "Neither do we. But liking it doesn't stop the world from ending." He didn't answer. We moved to the observation benches. Steve sat stiffly, his shield resting against the wall beside him. Banner sat across from him, his posture hunched, his eyes tired. I leaned back in my chair, hands behind my head, smirking faintly. The silence stretched for a while. Finally, Steve spoke. "You don't look comfortable here," he said to Banner. Banner chuckled softly, without humor. "That's because I'm not. But it's necessary. I've spent my life running from what I am. Here, at least, I can make myself useful." Steve frowned. "What you are?" Banner's eyes flicked toward me briefly, then back to Steve. "It's complicated." I smirked. "That's putting it lightly." Steve's eyes narrowed. "You're hiding something." Banner shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his glasses. "I'm not hiding. Just controlling." Steve studied him a long moment, then nodded once. "Then you've got more in common with me than you think." Banner blinked, surprised. Steve leaned forward, his voice steady. "You think being different makes you dangerous? Maybe it does. But it also makes you useful. People need you. Just like they need me. You don't get to run from that." Banner looked down, his hands tightening slightly. I smirked. "See? I told you two would get along." Neither of them smiled. We spent the rest of the day in the wing. Banner explained the observation protocols, the suppressant systems, the way the soldiers rotated shifts at the doors. Steve listened carefully, his questions sharp and to the point. "How long has she been here?" "A few days," Banner answered. "Does she talk?" "Not often." "Is she dangerous?" "Yes." Steve's jaw tightened at that. But he didn't press further. When we finally left, the corridors felt quieter. Steve walked beside me, his shield strapped to his back again, his steps steady. Finally, he spoke. "Banner's not a soldier. But he's trying." I smirked faintly. "He's trying harder than anyone else I know. And that's why I trust him." Steve nodded once, silent after that. Chapter 33, Into the Field. The base felt different that morning. Not louder, not busier. Just heavier. Soldiers drilled as usual, scientists moved with clipboards, engines rumbled in the motor pool. But every step had a weight to it, like everyone could feel something was about to shift. And they weren't wrong. Today was the first time I was taking Banner and Steve out of the base together. Banner, because his brain was the sharpest thing I had when it came to strange biology. Steve, because if he was ever going to integrate with the Foundation, he needed to see how we worked outside these walls. Low risk, I'd told myself. A mission simple enough to prove the system without killing anyone. As if those existed. We met in the motor pool. Rows of vehicles gleamed under the overhead lights, armored transports lined up like steel teeth. My soldiers were already loading crates, rifles slung, helmets locked in. Their boots thudded in rhythm, their silence absolute. Steve stood near one of the jeeps, his shield strapped to his arm, his posture straight as ever. He wore the same fatigues we'd issued him, plain black, no insignia. On him, though, they looked like a uniform. Banner stood a little behind him, shifting uneasily from foot to foot. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets, his glasses slipping down his nose as he watched the soldiers move. I strolled up, smirk tugging at my lips. "Look at that! The dream team! One scientist, one super soldier. Between the two of you, maybe we'll only lose half the squad this time." Banner winced. Steve gave me a sharp look. "That's not funny." I chuckled. "Relax, Cap. It's a joke." "Mostly." Neither smiled. "Figures." We loaded into the lead transport. The hum of the engine filled the hold, the steel walls vibrating faintly under the strain. Soldiers sat lined up on the benches, rifles resting between their knees, their faces hidden behind helmets. Steve sat across from me, shield resting against his leg. His eyes swept the transport slowly, taking in every detail. The discipline of the soldiers. The silence. The lack of chatter. Finally, he asked, "They don't talk?" I smirked. "Not unless I tell them to. Orders are clear, concise, and final. No noise, no questions, no hesitation. That's why they're still alive." His jaw tightened faintly. "Soldiers aren't machines." I leaned back, grinning. "Tell that to them. They'd disagree." Banner shifted uncomfortably beside him, his voice low. "Where exactly are we going?" I smirked. "Upstate. Abandoned facility. Nothing fancy. Reports of movement we don't like. We sweep it, we box it, we go home. Easy day." Steve frowned. "Movement of what?" "You'll see," I said lightly. He didn't look satisfied. The ride stretched long, the engine humming steady, the world outside flashing by in streaks of grey. Forests blurred past, roads narrowing into dirt tracks, until finally the transport slowed. We rolled to a stop outside a crumbling facility, its walls cracked, windows shattered. Rust clung to the steel gates, weeds bursting through the concrete. The place smelled of damp and decay even from here. I stepped off the ramp last, boots crunching on gravel. The air was heavy, the silence thicker than it should have been. "Well," I said cheerfully. "Home sweet home." Steve scanned the building sharply, his shield raised slightly. Banner hung back, his shoulders tense. I raised my hand. My soldiers spread instantly, 2 squads flanking the building, rifles raised, movements silent. Steve's eyes narrowed faintly. Efficient. I smirked. Told you. They don't flinch. We entered the facility slow. The halls were dark, the air cold. Dust coated the floor, thick enough to leave prints with every step. The walls were streaked with rust and mold, wires hanging from the ceiling in twisted bundles. My soldiers moved in perfect formation, rifles sweeping corners, flashlights cutting through the dark. Steve followed at my side, his shield raised, every step careful. Banner stayed close behind, his eyes darting nervously over the shadows. We reached the first chamber, a wide, open space lined with broken equipment and shattered crates. The air smelled faintly of rot. That's when I saw it. Movement in the far corner. A shape hunched low, pale and thin, its limbs too long, its movements jerky. It froze at the light, its eyes reflecting back in the beam. SCP-173-JP. The Twisted Mimic. I smirked faintly. Well, boys, there's our guest. Steve frowned sharply. What is that? Something that doesn't like being looked at, I said lightly. Keep your eyes on it, Cap. Blink, and it'll snap your neck before you can raise that shield. His jaw tightened, his stance steadying. You're serious? Always, I said, my grin fading. I raised my hand. My soldiers spread in a circle, flashlights trained on the creature. Its body twitched, shuddering under the glare, its limbs jerking unnaturally. Banner's voice was low, tense. What's the plan? Simple, I said. Box it. The trick is keeping eyes on it until the crate's in place. Lose focus, and it moves. Fast. Steve's brows furrowed. That's it. That's it, I said. The operation began. Soldiers moved slowly, their flashlights locked on the creature. 2 of them dragged the containment crate forward, its steel walls gleaming under the beams. Steve held his shield steady, his eyes locked on the creature. His breathing was controlled, even, his gaze unblinking. The thing twitched again, its limbs straining against some unseen barrier. Its eyes glowed faint in the light, fixed on the nearest soldier. Banner muttered under his breath. It's agitated. Stress levels spiking. I smirked faintly. Then we better hurry. The crate thudded into place. The doors swung open, wide and waiting. On 3, I said. 1, 2, 3. The soldiers surged forward, their beams never leaving the creature. They herded it back slowly, step by step, toward the crate. Its limbs twitched, its body straining, but it couldn't move forward under the light. Finally, with a sharp screech, it stumbled into the crate. The doors slammed shut, locks hissing tight. The room fell silent. Steve exhaled slowly, lowering his shield. His voice was steady. That thing was real. I smirked, clapping him on the shoulder. Welcome to the job. Banner rubbed his temples, muttering. This is insane. I chuckled softly. You get used to it. We cleared the rest of the facility, but nothing else moved. No more monsters hiding in the dark. Just rot, rust, and silence. By the time we loaded back into the transport, the crate secured, the sun was dipping low. The ride back was quiet, the hum of the engine steady. Steve sat across from me again, his shield at his side. His gaze was sharp, but not angry. Just thoughtful. Finally, he said, your men are good. Disciplined. But this isn't war. It's something else. I smirked. Exactly. And now you've seen it. He didn't reply, but his eyes said enough. He understood. Chapter 34, Fury at the door. The motor pool was quiet when we rolled in. Engines died down one by one, the smell of oil and exhaust filling the air. Soldiers filed out in silence, rifles slung, boots thudding against the steel floor. The crate carrying SCP-173-JP was hauled away, chains rattling against its reinforced surface as it disappeared deeper into the containment wing. It should have felt like any other return. But it didn't. There was someone waiting. Nick Fury. He stood at the far end of the motor pool, his coat draped heavy over his shoulders, his one good eye fixed on me the moment I stepped off the ramp. The soldiers around him shifted faintly, but none spoke. They didn't have to. The air was already heavy enough. I smirked faintly, slinging my rifle over my shoulder. Well, look at that. Director Fury, in the flesh. What's the occasion? Don't tell me you missed me. His expression didn't change. You've got something that belongs to me. I raised an eyebrow, amused. Pretty sure everything here's mine, Fury. You'll have to be more specific. His gaze sharpened. Steve Rogers. Bruce Banner. They're not Foundation assets. They're mine. Steve froze as he stepped off the transport behind me. His shield gleamed against the light, his posture stiff as his eyes landed on Fury. Recognition flickered across his face, mixed with confusion. Nick Fury, he said quietly. Banner came next, his shoulders tight, his eyes darting nervously. He didn't speak, but I could feel the tension rolling off him. Fury's eye flicked to them both, then back to me. They come with me. I chuckled softly, my grin widening. Now, see, that's where we disagree. They're not prisoners, Fury. They're part of the team. And last I checked, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't get to dictate Foundation operations. His jaw tightened faintly. You don't know what you're playing with. Banner is a ticking bomb. Rogers belongs to S.H.I.E.L.D. And you, he stepped closer, his voice low, you're meddling in things way above your clearance. I smirked. Funny thing about clearance. Mine doesn't stop at your desk. The motor pool stayed silent, the air heavy. My soldiers stood in formation behind me, rifles cradled, their faces hidden. They didn't flinch, didn't move. Steve stood between us, his shield steady at his side, his eyes darting between Fury and me. Banner stayed behind him, his breathing sharp, his posture tense. Finally, Steve spoke. Fury, what is this? Fury's eye flicked toward him. It's what I've been planning, Rogers. What I've been building. A team. A group of remarkable people, brought together to fight the battles we can't. The Avengers Initiative. Steve blinked, his jaw tightening faintly. Avengers. Fury nodded once. The world's getting stranger, Rogers. Stronger. We need something to match it. You. Banner. Stark. Others. Together, you could be more than soldiers. You could be a shield for the planet. Steve's gaze flicked to me, conflicted. Banner muttered under his breath. You don't want me on a team. Fury's eye locked on him. You're exactly who I need. Not the other guy you. The scientist. The man who can solve problems before they explode. Banner's hands tightened in his pockets. I finally stepped forward, smirking faintly. Nice speech, Fury. Real inspiring. But here's the problem, these two are with me. And my people don't just walk off with strangers because you give them a fancy name. Fury's eye narrowed. You're standing in my way. I grinned wider. Damn right I am. The silence stretched long. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Steve's gaze shifted between us, his lips pressed tight. Banner stayed hunched, silent, his eyes on the floor. My soldiers didn't move, didn't even breathe louder. Finally, Fury exhaled through his nose, his shoulders loosening slightly. All right. You don't want to give them up. Fine. But you're not keeping me out either. The Avengers initiative is happening. Whether you're with us or not. I tilted my head, amused. So that's the play? Threats and ultimatums. He shook his head. No. Options. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the hood of a nearby jeep. The papers inside were crisp, the shield insignia stamped at the top. I flipped it open, scanning the pages. Stark. Thor. Names, files, potential recruits. And at the center, Avengers Initiative. Fury's voice was steady. The world is changing. SHIELD can't do it alone. The Foundation can't either. We don't have to like each other, but we do need each other. I looked up at him, smirk fading slightly. For once, he wasn't bluffing. Steve stepped closer, his shield strapped tight. If this is real, then I should be part of it. Banner sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. I don't want to be part of it. Fury looked at them both, then back at me. You want them safe? Then put them on the team where they belong. Keep your Foundation. Do your shadow games. But when the time comes, they fight with us. I leaned back against the jeep, smirking faintly again. So we join the club, is that it? Play nice with SHIELD, share our toys, and hope you don't stab us in the back later. Fury's gaze didn't waver. You want the world safe? That's the price. For a moment, I let the silence hang. My soldiers didn't move. Steve's gaze was steady, Banner's posture tight. Fury's single eye never blinked. Finally, I chuckled softly. All right, Fury. You win. The Foundation will play ball. Avengers, SHIELD, Foundation will see how well this circus works together. Steve exhaled slowly, relief flickering across his face. Banner didn't look relieved at all. Fury gave me the faintest nod. Good. Then we start now. The rest of the meeting stretched long into the night. Fury outlined the plan: recruitment, threats on the horizon, the kind of battles that were coming. He spoke of Stark, of gods, of weapons beyond comprehension. Steve listened intently, his jaw set. Banner kept quiet, but I saw him absorbing every word. And me? I leaned back in my chair, smirking faintly, letting the details roll in. The world was changing. Fury was right about that. And now the Foundation was in the middle of it. Chapter 35, writing us in. The briefing room was colder than it needed to be. Steel walls, steel table, steel chairs. Stark would have laughed at the lack of decor. Fury probably liked it that way: plain, sharp, no distractions. He stood at the far end of the table, coat heavy on his shoulders, one good eye fixed on me as if he could pin me to the wall with it. Steve sat to my right, his shield leaning against his chair. His posture was ramrod straight, his hands folded neatly on the table. Banner sat on my left, hunched low, his fingers tapping lightly against his knee. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded, smirking faintly. So, Fury. You want us on your little dream team. Avengers, Initiative, whatever you're calling it. Fine. But if we're in, we're written in. Fury's brow twitched. Written in. Yeah, I said, cheerful but steady. Not a footnote, not a side project, not a nameless black ops group nobody mentions. The Foundation goes on the books. Part of the structure. We don't take orders from SHIELD, we work alongside them. Equal footing. Fury's jaw tightened. That's not how this works. I smirked. Then it's not how we work. Steve's gaze flicked between us, his expression unreadable. Banner shifted uneasily, muttering something under his breath I didn't catch. Fury's voice was low, controlled. You think you can dictate terms? I came here to bring Rogers and Banner into the fold. You're already pushing it by keeping them here. I leaned forward, grin fading into something sharper. And yet, here we are. You didn't storm in with a squad, didn't try to drag them out by force. Why? Because you know the Foundation works. You saw it with Rogers. You saw it with Banner. You know damn well your initiative needs us. So either write us in, or watch us work alone. The silence stretched long. Fury didn't blink, didn't twitch, didn't move. Just stared. Steve finally broke it. He's right, Fury. Fury's eye shifted toward him. Steve's voice was steady. I've seen what they can do. These soldiers, they're disciplined, effective. Different from the army, but good. If this initiative is about protecting people, then it makes sense to keep them involved. Leaving them out would be a mistake. Banner sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't even want to be on a team. But if you're going to build one, you need every advantage you can get. And the Foundation is an advantage. Fury's jaw tightened faintly. I grinned wide, leaning back again. See? Even the genius and the Boy Scout agree. Write us in. Fury finally exhaled, slow and sharp. You want equal footing? Fine. But you're not getting free rein. The Foundation operates under oversight. You'll coordinate with S.H.I.E.L.D., share intelligence, share assets. No more secrets. I chuckled. Fury, we breathe secrets. But fine, we'll play ball. We'll share enough to keep the machine running. You don't have to like us. You just have to accept us. His eye narrowed. You push this too far, and we shut you down. I smirked faintly. Good luck with that. The negotiation dragged for hours. Fury pushed for control, I pushed back harder. In the end, we landed somewhere in the middle. Foundation written into the initiative, equal seat at the table, but bound by coordination with S.H.I.E.L.D. He didn't like it. I didn't either. But it was enough. Steve looked satisfied. Banner looked miserable. And me? I was grinning like a cat. We were in. That night, I stood in the control room, watching the monitors glow. Soldiers drilled below, their boots pounding in rhythm. Labs buzzed in the distance, containment wings humming. Steve was out on the training floor, running drills with 2 squads. Banner was in his lab, hunched over data streams, his glasses slipping as always. And me? I leaned against the railing, smirking faintly. The Foundation wasn't just in the shadows anymore. We were written into history. Chapter 36, Preparing for a God. The base was never quiet, but today the noise had a different weight to it. Engines roared longer in the motor pool, soldiers drilled harder in the barracks, and the labs hummed with twice their usual activity. The news had hit the Foundation and S.H.I.E.L.D. at the same time. Loki, Thor's brother. Not just strong, not just strange, but dangerous in ways no simple containment could cover. Fury's words still rang in my head from the last meeting. We're not dealing with monsters anymore. We're dealing with gods. I'd grinned when he said it. But now, standing at the edge of the control room, arms folded as the monitors scrolled with data feeds, I wasn't smiling. Not because I was scared. Fear wasn't in my playbook. But because this was the first time the Foundation was about to walk openly into the same arena as S.H.I.E.L.D.'s finest. No shadows, no secrets. This would be public. And it had to go right. Steve was the first to show up in the control room. Shield on his back, uniform crisp, jaw set. He carried himself like he was walking into another war. "You wanted to see me?" he asked. I smirked faintly, nodding toward the monitors. Footage scrolled from satellite feeds, blurry captures of Loki's movements, energy spikes no one could explain. Meet the new assignment. Name's Loki. Thor's brother. God of mischief, apparently. Doesn't like following rules, and rumor says he's got a shiny cube that can rewrite physics. Steve studied the monitors, his brows furrowed. A god? Yep, I said cheerfully. Don't worry, Cap. He bleeds. Everything bleeds. We just need the right tools to make it happen. His jaw tightened faintly. This isn't the kind of fight you can win with rifles and drills. I leaned against the console, grinning. Good thing we've got more than rifles and drills. We've got Stark building toys, Banner cooking up science, and you our very own man out of time. He didn't smile. Figures. Banner arrived next. His shoulders were hunched, his eyes already glued to the monitors, muttering under his breath as he scanned the energy readings. This isn't natural, he said quietly. Those spikes, they're not just power. They're dimensional. That cube, it's more than energy. It's a doorway. I smirked faintly. A doorway to where? He shot me a look over his glasses. Anywhere. Steve frowned. You're saying this cube can bring more of them here? Banner nodded grimly. If Loki has it, then yes. The room fell silent for a moment. My soldiers at the stations didn't move, didn't speak. Their hands tapped steadily at the consoles, their helmets hiding their faces. I clapped my hands lightly, breaking the tension. All right, then. All the more reason to be ready. We'll set containment around Shield's staging area. Reinforced barriers, suppressants, heavy fire support. If Loki wants to bring an army, he's not stepping 1 foot past our line. Steve looked at me sharply. You're treating him like one of your monsters. But this isn't the same. I grinned. Everything's the same, Cap. Doesn't matter if it crawls out of the dark or drops from the sky. If it threatens people, we box it. Banner muttered under his breath. You can't box a god. I smirked wider. Watch me. Later that afternoon, Fury himself came down. He didn't knock, didn't ask, he just appeared in the control room doorway, his coat heavy, his single eye fixed on me. You're mobilizing already? I grinned, spreading my arms. Of course. You told me about the god, remember? I like to be early to the party. He stepped closer, his voice sharp. This isn't your show. Shield takes point on Loki. You stay coordinated. Nothing more. I leaned back against the railing, smirk tugging at my lips. Relax, Fury. I'm not stealing your thunder. Just making sure when your point team gets knocked flat, someone's left to pick up the pieces. His eye narrowed. You think this is a game? I chuckled softly. No. But if it was, I'd be winning. Steve shifted uncomfortably beside me, his voice steady. He's right about one thing, Fury. We need everyone. If Loki's as dangerous as you say, Shield can't do this alone. Banner sighed, adjusting his glasses. Neither can the Foundation. Not against this. Fury looked between them, then back at me. His jaw tightened faintly. Fine. You want in? You're in. But when this goes south, the blame's on both of us. I grinned wide. Deal. Preparation lasted days. The motor pool was alive with movement trucks loaded with crates of suppressant launchers, drones prepped for flight, armor polished until it gleamed under the lights. Soldiers drilled harder than ever, their boots echoing through the barracks, their rifles raised in perfect rhythm. In the labs, Banner hunched over energy models, sweat beading at his brow as he mapped out the Tesseract's readings. His muttering filled the room, half equations, half curses. His team scurried to keep up, scribbling notes, adjusting equipment. Steve split his time between the training hall and the control room. He drilled with soldiers, ran them through maneuvers, adjusted their formations with sharp, precise commands. They responded instantly, adapting to his style as easily as they had mine. And when he wasn't on the floor, he stood in the control room, watching the feeds, his jaw tight, his eyes steady. And me? I moved between them all, grinning, teasing, keeping the edge sharp but the mood light. "You look like hell, Banner," I said one night as he slumped over a console. "Want me to get you a pillow?" He groaned, rubbing his temples. "You don't sleep either." "Yeah," I said cheerfully. "But I look good doing it." Steve overheard and shook his head. "You're impossible." I winked at him. And yet, here we are. The day came faster than I expected. We stood on the deck of the helicarrier. Shield agents bustled around us, rifles slung, uniforms crisp. Foundation soldiers lined the opposite side, silent, their black armor gleaming under the floodlights. Fury stood at the center, his eye sweeping across the gathered teams. "Loki's on Earth. He's already moving. We don't have time for mistakes. You all know your jobs. Do them." I leaned closer to Steve, smirking. "See? He does speeches too. Not as good as yours, though." Steve ignored me. Banner muttered under his breath, his eyes on the monitors. "This is going to end badly." I grinned wide. "Then let's make sure it ends our way." Chapter 37, Boots on the Deck. The helicarrier was alive with noise. Engines thrummed beneath the deck, their vibration steady under my boots. Wind whipped hard at this altitude, carrying the faint tang of fuel and ozone. Shield agents moved in sharp lines, rifles strapped across their chests, uniforms crisp under the floodlights. And across from them, my Foundation soldiers stood silent. Black armor, rifles at their sides, helmets down. Not a word. Not a twitch. Just 30 men and women waiting on my orders. The difference between Shield's agents and mine was obvious, even Fury's people couldn't ignore it. His men fidgeted, muttered, shifted their weight. Mine didn't blink. I leaned against the railing at the center of the deck, smirk tugging at my lips. "Well, this is cozy. Almost feels like a family reunion. Only with more guns and less turkey." Steve, standing at my side, gave me a sharp look. "This isn't a game." I chuckled. "Relax, Cap. Nobody's laughing but me." Banner stood a little further back, hunched, his hands buried deep in his pockets. His eyes darted nervously over the massive carrier, the soldiers, the armed jets parked along the deck. He didn't belong here, and he knew it. Fury approached then, his coat flaring slightly in the wind, his single eye locked on me. "You're deploying squads with my agents." I smirked. That was the deal, wasn't it? Foundation written in. Equal footing. So here we are. My people watch your people's backs, your people watch mine. Everybody goes home happy. He didn't look happy. But he didn't argue either. We hit the briefing room an hour later. The table was wide, ringed by monitors glowing with data feeds. Stark was already there, lounging in a chair with his feet up, flipping through a hologram of Loki's movements. He glanced up as we walked in, his smirk immediate. Well, well. The mystery man and his band of silent stormtroopers. "You know, Fury didn't say we'd be cosplaying today." I grinned. Don't be jealous, Stark. Black looks better on us than it would on you. He smirked back, but his eyes flicked to Steve and Banner. You two look thrilled to be here. Steve ignored him, taking his seat with crisp posture. Banner muttered something under his breath, adjusting his glasses. Fury cut in before Stark could push further. Focus. Loki's been spotted in Stuttgart. He's after something, and he won't be subtle about it. Rogers, you're going in. Banner, you'll track the energy readings from the cube. Stark, air support. Foundation squads embed with shield strike teams. We contain Loki and bring him in. I leaned forward, smirking faintly. Sounds simple. Which means it won't be. Steve shot me a look, unimpressed. Stark chuckled. Finally, someone here who gets it. The carrier shifted course. Engines roared louder as the city came into view hours later. We deployed fast. Shield Quinjets swooped low over Stuttgart, their engines cutting sharp through the night sky. Streets below were alive with chaos, civilians screaming, scattering from the opera house as Loki strode through the square, his staff glowing faint in his hands. His armor gleamed under the streetlights, his expression calm, almost amused as he forced the crowd to kneel. Well, I muttered over the comms, smirking. He's definitely got the flair for theater. Steve's voice crackled back, sharp and steady. Stay focused. My squads deployed in silence, rappelling from the Quinjet onto rooftops, alleys, the edges of the square. Their boots hit pavement in perfect rhythm, rifles raised, helmets glinting under the lights. Shield agents fanned out nearby, their movements less precise but still sharp. Steve hit the ground with his shield up, Banner staying back in the Quinjet with his monitors, eyes glued to the readings. Stark's suit roared overhead, red and gold cutting through the night. And Loki? He didn't even flinch. Steve stepped forward first, his voice carrying across the square. Loki! Drop the weapon and surrender. Loki turned, his smile faint. The soldier out of time. How quaint. I chuckled softly over the comms. Well, at least he does his homework. Steve ignored me, his stance steady. This ends now. Loki raised his staff, its glow pulsing brighter. On the contrary, Captain. This is just beginning. The fight broke out fast. Steve charged, shield raised. Loki swung his staff, the blast slamming against the shield with a crack of energy. Steve staggered but held firm, pushing back hard. Stark swooped down, repulsors flaring, slamming Loki off balance. My soldiers opened fire immediately, their rifles spitting suppressants, chemical bursts hissing through the air. Loki snarled, swinging his staff to deflect the streams, the chemicals sizzling against the barrier of energy. He glanced at them sharply, surprise flickering in his eyes. My soldiers didn't stop. Their line was relentless, every burst perfectly timed, perfectly placed. Shield agents followed suit, their gunfire echoing across the square, but it was my squads that pressed the rhythm, silent and precise. Loki's smile faded. I dropped from the Quinjet last, boots hitting pavement with a sharp thud. My rifle snapped up, my smirk wide. Hey, reindeer games. Nice staff. Compensating for something. His eyes flicked to me, sharp and cold. He swung the staff. Energy flared, but my soldiers shifted instantly, nets firing in perfect sync. Reinforced steel cables wrapped around his arms, his legs, sparks flying as the staff slammed against the bindings. For a moment, he was pinned. Steve surged forward, shield raised. Stark hovered above, repulsors primed. Shield agents closed in, rifles steady. And Loki laughed. With a surge of energy, the bindings snapped, the blast sending 2 of my men flying back into the wall. He raised his staff, the glow intensifying. I straightened, my smirk fading into something sharp. All right, then. Plan B. The fight dragged across the square. Steve kept Loki grounded, his shield deflecting blow after blow. Stark hammered him from above, repulsors lighting the night. My soldiers boxed him in, their rifles firing in steady rhythm, their nets and suppressants forcing him back again and again. But he didn't fall. Every blast from the staff sent another soldier sprawling, another agent crashing into the pavement. The glow of the cube's energy lit the square like lightning, each strike louder than the last. Finally, Stark swooped low, blasting Loki off balance. Steve lunged, slamming him down with the shield. My squad surged forward, nets snapping shut again, this time reinforced with chemical suppressants burning against his armor. And this time, Loki stayed down. His smile returned faintly as the restraints clicked tight. You think you've won? How amusing. I leaned over him, smirking wide. No. But I think you've lost. By the time the Quinjet lifted off, Loki was secured in chains, his staff locked in reinforced containment. My soldiers sat silent in their rows, their armor scorched, their rifles dented, but none spoke. Steve sat across from me, shield at his side, his eyes steady. Stark hovered near the ramp, his suit humming as it cooled. Banner's voice crackled through the comms. The readings spiked. That staff, it's tied to the cube. If he's here, then the cube's not far. Steve exhaled slowly. Then this isn't over. I grinned. It never is. Chapter 38, The Cage and the God. The helicarrier's holding wing was colder than the rest of the ship. Steel walls, steel floors, bright lights that hummed overhead. The air smelled faintly of fuel and antiseptic, a sharp sterile edge over the steady vibration of engines underfoot. Soldiers lined the hall, shield agents mixed with my own Foundation squads, their rifles steady, their boots planted firm. No one spoke. At the center of it all stood the cage. Reinforced glass, steel framework, hanging over an open drop straight through the helicarrier's belly. One switch, and whoever was inside would plummet 30,000 feet. Not a perfect containment, too dramatic for my taste, but effective enough for the theater shield liked to put on. And inside the cage sat Loki. He lounged casually on the bench, his armor gleaming under the lights, his expression calm. His staff had been taken, his wrists bound, but his smile remained faint. His eyes flicked lazily across the room, sharp and calculating, but amused all the same. I leaned against the railing outside, arms crossed, smirk tugging at my lips. Well, if it isn't the man of the hour. Comfortable. His eyes slid to me. I've had worse accommodations. I chuckled. Good to hear. Was worried Shield wouldn't live up to hotel standards. Fury stepped in then, his coat sweeping behind him, his one good eye locked on Loki. This isn't a hotel. It's a cage. And you're not leaving until we get answers. Loki tilted his head, his smile widening faintly. Answers? Or entertainment? Steve was next through the door, shield strapped to his back, his jaw set. He didn't speak, but his gaze locked on Loki with sharp focus, steady and unwavering. Banner followed, hunched as always, his hands shoved in his pockets. His eyes darted nervously toward the cage, then away again. He stood close to me, like the presence of my soldiers steadied him. Stark strolled in last, his suit peeled back to casual clothes, a glass of something in his hand. He smirked as soon as he saw Loki. Nice digs. What did you do, bribe the decorators? Loki's gaze flicked lazily to him. You must be Stark. I expected more, armor. Tony smirked wider. Don't worry, I can put it back on whenever I want. Kind of like a second skin. You wouldn't get it. Fury didn't waste time. He stepped closer to the glass, his voice sharp. Where's the cube? Loki smiled faintly. Safe. With who? He chuckled softly. With me. Always with me. Fury's eye narrowed. You think this is a joke? That cube can tear this planet apart. You're going to tell me where it is. Loki leaned back on the bench, his posture relaxed. I think you underestimate me, Director. Or perhaps you underestimate yourselves. You cage me, you point your weapons, you bark your questions, but you're afraid. Afraid of me. Afraid of what I can do. Afraid of what's coming. Steve stepped forward, his voice firm. If you think you're scaring us, you're wasting your time. Loki's eyes flicked to him. His smile grew. The soldier out of time. The man out of place. You wear the stars and stripes like a badge, but you're lost in a world that doesn't need you. A relic pretending to still have a purpose. Steve's jaw tightened. He didn't reply. I smirked faintly, cutting in. Careful, Loki. He's got a shield, and he actually knows how to use it. Loki's eyes slid back to me. And you? The jester who hides behind shadows and soldiers. You play at control, but you fear what you cannot contain. You leash the monsters and call it safety. But what happens when the leash breaks? My smirk didn't fade, but my tone sharpened. Then we put them down. Simple as that. His smile widened faintly. Brave words. Hollow ones. Banner shifted uncomfortably beside me, his voice low. This isn't getting us anywhere. Tony chuckled, sipping his drink. Sure it is. It's getting Loki to monologue. Classic villain move. Loki's gaze snapped to him. And you? Man of metal, man of ego. You wrap yourself in armor to hide the truth. But you are fragile. You will break. Tony smirked wider. And you need a new writer. Seriously, what is this? Shakespeare in Asgard. I laughed softly. He's got a point. You're laying it on a little thick. Loki's smile faltered, just for a moment. Then it returned. Fury cut in, his voice sharp. We're done here. Keep him locked down. Double the guards. He's stalling for something. Loki chuckled. Oh, I'm not stalling. I'm enjoying the view. The room emptied slowly. Fury was the last to leave, his eye lingering on me for a moment before he turned sharply on his heel. I stayed behind, leaning against the railing, my smirk faint. My soldiers stood silent at the doors, rifles cradled, helmets gleaming. Loki sat in the cage, his eyes on me. You think you're clever, he said softly. But you're just another player in someone else's game. I grinned. Then I guess I'll just have to win anyway. His smile widened faintly. We'll see. Back in the control room, the team gathered again. Steve stood stiff at the table, Banner hunched over the monitors, Stark leaning back with his feet up. Fury paced, his coat flaring with every turn. He's hiding something, Fury said sharply. He wanted us to bring him in. He's planning something bigger. Steve nodded. He's not afraid of us. That's the problem. Banner muttered under his breath. And the readings keep spiking. That staff, it's tied to the cube somehow. He's not lying about that. Tony smirked faintly. So, glowing stick connected to a glowing cube. Who didn't see that coming? I leaned against the table, grinning. Doesn't matter. He's in a cage. His stick's in a box. Whatever he's planning, we'll be ready. Fury shot me a sharp look. You better be. Chapter 39, The Staff in Our Hands. The staff sat in the lab like it owned the place. It was strapped down to a reinforced table, restraints wrapped tight around the shaft, clamps glowing faintly with the suppressants my soldiers had installed. Even with the restraints, its glow pulsed faint, a steady heartbeat of alien power under the bright lights of the helicarrier's lab. Banner hovered over it, glasses slipping down his nose, hands buried in his pockets as he muttered to himself. His monitors lit up with strange readings, spikes and waves I didn't pretend to understand. Steve stood near the door, arms crossed, shield on his back, his jaw set as he kept a steady eye on the staff. He hadn't taken his gaze off it since we brought it in. Stark leaned casually against the far wall, flipping a screwdriver between his fingers, his eyes sharp on the weapon. You know, if I had a nickel for every glowing alien stick I've seen in the last week, I'd have, well, one. But it's a start. I smirked, standing near the table, arms crossed. Don't get any ideas, Stark. This thing's foundation property now. Fury, of course, was already scowling. He stood opposite me, his coat heavy, his one good eye locked on me like he was trying to drill a hole in my skull. The staff is shield evidence. It's not going anywhere. I grinned, cheerful as ever. Funny, because last I checked, it's sitting in my suppressants, guarded by my soldiers, on a table I reinforced. Looks pretty foundation to me. His jaw tightened. We're not handing over alien tech for you to lock away in your shadows. I leaned forward slightly, grin fading into something sharper. And I'm not letting you keep something that ties directly to the cube. This isn't just a weapon, Fury. It's a key. Banner can see it, Stark can see it, hell, even Cap probably feels it in his gut. This belongs in containment. Steve finally spoke, his voice steady. He's right. This thing doesn't belong in the field. It's dangerous. If we're keeping it, it needs to be locked down. Properly. Fury's eye flicked to him, then back to me. Locked down doesn't mean stolen. Stark chuckled, tossing his screwdriver onto the counter. I'm with the guy in black on this one. This thing's humming like a nuke about to go off, and your boys barely managed to keep Loki wrapped. If someone sneezes too hard, what's to stop this from blasting a hole in the carrier? Banner cleared his throat, his voice low, hesitant. It's unstable. The readings are off the scale. Energy signatures are nearly identical to the cube's. If Loki was using this, it means he's channeling the cube's power directly through it. Which means... He trailed off, his eyes flicking nervously toward me. I smirked. Which means whoever controls this stick can probably open doors. Same as the cube. Banner nodded reluctantly. Yes. The lab went quiet for a long moment. Fury finally exhaled, his voice sharp. You're not taking it. I grinned wide again, leaning back against the table. Not taking it, Fury. Already took it. Question is what we do next. The next few hours were a dance. Banner ran tests, his muttering filling the room as he adjusted sensors, tapped at monitors, and scribbled notes. Stark poked at the restraints, asking questions about the alloys, the suppressants, the readouts. Steve stayed near the door, his posture steady, his eyes never leaving the weapon. Fury paced, his coat swaying with every step, his gaze cutting to me every time I so much as leaned closer to the staff. And me? I kept the mood light. So, Banner, I said cheerfully as he frowned at another spike on the screen. If this thing's like the cube, you think we can use it to zap Loki's hair gel out of existence? Pretty sure that'd cripple him. Banner muttered without looking up. Not how it works. Steve glanced at me, unimpressed. This isn't a joke. I smirked. Relax, Cap. Just keeping the tension down. You're all wound tighter than the staff's clamps. Stark snorted. For once, I agree with him. You all look like you swallowed a cactus. Loosen up, the stick's not going anywhere. As if on cue, the restraints creaked faintly. The glow of the staff pulsed brighter for a moment, a sharp hum echoing through the room. Everyone froze. Banner's eyes widened. It's reacting. Steve's shield snapped up instantly, his stance shifting. Fury barked. Shut it down. My soldiers at the door snapped forward, rifles raised. I stepped closer, my grin fading. Banner. Talk to me. He swallowed hard, tapping furiously at the monitors. It's resonating. Something's pulling at it. Like it's being called. Stark frowned. By who? Banner looked up, his face pale. By the cube. The hum faded as suddenly as it came. The glow dimmed back to its steady pulse. The restraints held. But the silence afterward was heavier than before. Fury broke it first, his voice low. That staff doesn't leave this ship. I smirked faintly, but my tone was sharp. Then double the guards. My men, not just yours. And it stays in my suppressants. If this thing wants to sing to the cube, we make damn sure it doesn't get the chance. Steve nodded slowly. Agreed. Lock it down. Banner rubbed his temples. I'll need more equipment. Better sensors. If it's resonating, we have to know when and why. Stark grinned faintly. And I'll take a peek too. Never hurts to have a genius run a second opinion. Fury's jaw tightened, but he finally gave a short nod. Fine. But the staff doesn't leave SHIELD custody. You want to study it, you do it here. I grinned wide again, cheerful once more. Works for me. As long as it doesn't blow up under your nose, Fury. He shot me a glare. By the time we left the lab, Banner was already buried in his monitors, Stark was humming to himself while tinkering with the restraints, and Steve lingered by the door, shield on his back, eyes still locked on the weapon. Fury fell into step beside me in the hall. His voice was low. If that staff gets out of control, it's on you. I smirked, hands in my pockets. Relax, Fury. I've got it on a leash. He didn't smile. Figures. Chapter 40, The Struggle for Custody. The helicarrier's lab was too small for a fight this big. The staff still lay strapped down on the table, suppressants glowing faintly around its frame. Its light pulsed slow and steady, but every time I looked at it, I swore it was brighter than before. Banner's monitors kept flashing unreadable spikes, Stark was pacing like a kid with a new toy he wasn't allowed to touch, and Steve hadn't taken his eyes off it once. I leaned against the wall, arms folded, smirk tugging at my lips. All right. Enough dancing around it. We move the staff to Foundation custody. My facility's built for this. Reinforced vaults, suppressants strong enough to hold things worse than this. It doesn't stay here. Fury's coat swished as he turned to face me, his single eye sharp as ever. Not happening. The staff stays on the carrier. SHIELD secured it, SHIELD holds it. I grinned faintly. Funny, I remember my squads wrapping it up while your agents scrambled to keep up. We boxed Loki, we boxed his toy. That makes it ours. His jaw tightened. This isn't a negotiation. Steve stepped forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. If it's unstable, it doesn't belong here. The carrier isn't built for containment. If it reacts again, this entire ship is at risk. Fury's gaze flicked to him. You're saying you trust them more than SHIELD? Steve didn't flinch. I'm saying I trust the safest option. Banner rubbed his temples, his voice low but clear. The readings don't lie, Fury. The staff's resonating with the cube. If they're separated by this much distance and it's still reacting, we're sitting on a bomb. If it's contained wrong, the consequences. He trailed off, shaking his head. Stark smirked faintly, gesturing toward me. As much as I hate agreeing with Mr. Secret Society here, he's got the right setup. My gut says he's got bigger toys for lockup than you do, Nick. Fury's eye narrowed. Your gut doesn't run SHIELD, Stark. Stark grinned. No, but it does build the toys you like to borrow. The tension grew heavy. The hum of the staff seemed louder, the glow pulsing faintly against the steel walls. My soldiers at the doors didn't move, but their rifles shifted ever so slightly, angled toward the center of the room. SHIELD agents mirrored them unconsciously, hands twitching toward sidearms. I let the silence stretch, then pushed off the wall, my grin fading. Fury, listen. You keep the staff here, you're gambling with your people's lives. My vault in New York is layered triple suppression fields, armored barriers, fail-safes built for exactly this kind of threat. We box it there, and Banner keeps his toys hooked in remotely. You get data, we get safety. Everyone wins. His voice was sharp. And I'm supposed to trust you not to lock it away and bury the key. I smirked faintly. Trust has nothing to do with it. This is about survival. You've seen what happens when SHIELD pokes too hard at things it doesn't understand. You really want that staff singing to the cube while it's strapped to a lab bench with duct tape and prayers. Banner muttered. He's not wrong. Steve nodded once. Move it. Fury's eye flicked between them, then back to me. He didn't like it, not one bit. But he wasn't blind either. We argued for hours. Fury paced the lab like a caged panther, throwing sharp words and sharper looks. Stark baited him every other sentence, throwing in jokes that cut closer than they seemed. Banner drowned himself in redoubts, pointing out every spike, every unstable surge, every detail that made Fury's position weaker. Steve said little, but when he spoke, it was steady, decisive, impossible to ignore. And me? I kept the pressure up, cheerful on the surface, but every word backed by steel. Finally, Fury stopped pacing. He turned sharply, his coat flaring. Fine. You want it in your vault? You move it. But SHIELD watches every step. My agents don't leave its side. And if you so much as breathe wrong on it, I pull the plug. I grinned wide. See? Was that so hard? Steve exhaled slowly, relief flickering faintly in his eyes. Banner slumped in his chair, muttering under his breath. Stark smirked like he'd just won a bet. And the staff pulsed brighter on the table, as if mocking us all. The transfer was a production. My soldiers rolled in with reinforced containment, a steel vault layered with suppressants, humming faintly with power. SHIELD agents shadowed every move, rifles tight, eyes sharper than ever. The staff was lifted carefully, clamps clicking as it was lowered into the vault. The glow pulsed against the glass window for a moment, then dimmed as the suppressants kicked in. Banner watched nervously, muttering about energy fluctuations. Stark leaned in close, squinting at the seals like he wanted to tinker with them. Steve stood guard, his shield steady, eyes sharp on every step. And Fury? Fury never blinked. His eye was locked on me the entire time. I grinned cheerfully, even as the weight of the moment pressed down. Don't worry, Nick. I'll take good care of it. He didn't smile. Figures. Hours later, the vault was loaded onto a transport jet. My squads moved in formation, silent as ever, rifles cradled, armor gleaming under the floodlights. SHIELD agents flanked them, their steps less precise but no less tense. I stood at the ramp, arms folded, smirking faintly. Next stop, New York. Home sweet home for our shiny stick. Steve joined me, his shield strapped to his back, his posture steady. You think it'll hold? I grinned. It'll hold. If it doesn't, we'll make it. Banner sighed heavily, stepping up beside us. That's not how science works. Stark chuckled, clapping him on the shoulder. Cheer up, Doc. Worst case, it explodes and we don't have to worry about it anymore. Banner groaned. Steve shook his head. And me? I just grinned wider. Chapter 41, Into the Vault. The jet touched down on the outskirts of New York at dawn. Engines whined low as the transport slowed across the private airstrip, tires hissing against the concrete. The sun was just creeping over the skyline, painting the glass towers in a pale orange glow. But the city's beauty didn't matter to anyone on board. All eyes were on the steel vault at the center of the hold. The staff pulsed faintly inside, a dull blue glow that seemed almost alive. Every time the light flickered, Banner's monitors spiked, Stark smirked like he was itching to pry it open, and Steve's jaw clenched tighter. Shield agents stood close with their rifles ready. My soldiers stood closer, silent, helmets down, their armor gleaming in the half-light of the hold. I leaned against the railing by the ramp, smirking faintly. Home sweet home. New York's full of noise, but I've got a basement that'll make this stick feel right at home. Fury's voice was sharp behind me. This isn't your trophy case. You're lucky I agreed to this at all. My agents don't leave it until it's sealed. I chuckled softly, turning my head just enough to catch his glare. Relax, Nick. I promised you a front row seat. You'll get one. Just don't blink. Steve stood steady, his shield strapped to his back, eyes locked on the vault. We should move it now. The longer it stays exposed, the greater the risk. Banner muttered, hunched over his tablet. He's right. The resonance hasn't stopped since we left the helicarrier. It's stable, but not quiet. Like it's waiting for something. Stark grinned, tossing his screwdriver between his hands. Maybe it's homesick. Or maybe it just doesn't like Foundation decor. Personally, I vote we crack it open, poke around, and see if it sings. I smirked. Or we stick to the plan and don't blow up the runway before breakfast. The ramp dropped with a hiss, morning air flooding in. My soldiers moved first, boots hitting the pavement in perfect rhythm. They formed a perimeter instantly, rifles sweeping in arcs, helmets turning as one. Shield agents followed, less precise but sharp, their eyes flicking between the soldiers and the vault. The containment unit rolled out next, heavy wheels grinding against the ramp. Its suppressants hummed, faint blue light flickering across the steel. Even strapped down and sealed, the staff pulsed faintly, its glow fighting against the suppressants holding it in check. I stepped down last, boots crunching against the asphalt. The city stretched tall in the distance, but the facility was closed just a short convoy drive away. Fury walked beside me, his coat flaring in the breeze. One mistake, and this is over. You understand that? I grinned, hands in my pockets. Nick, if I made mistakes, you'd already be dead. He didn't smile. Figures. The convoy rolled out fast. Armored transports led and trailed, Foundation jeeps boxed the vault in tight, shield trucks slotted awkwardly into the gaps. Sirens wailed faintly ahead as my men cleared intersections, their formation perfect, rifles at the ready. Steve rode in the jeep behind me, his shield across his lap. His eyes stayed locked on the vault the entire time. Banner sat in the same vehicle, hunched with his tablet, muttering about fluctuations. Stark rode in his own car, making comments over the comms every 5 minutes just to hear himself talk. Seriously, Stark's voice crackled through the channel, How many silent stormtroopers does it take to babysit a magic glow stick? This is overkill. I smirked, glancing at Fury seated across from me in the transport. Overkill's the only kind of kill that works with gods. Steve's voice cut in over comms, steady and sharp. Keep focused. If Loki's after it, he won't let it go this easy. Banner muttered. I don't like this. It feels wrong. Like the staff knows where it's going. Stark chuckled. What, you think it's got GPS? Banner didn't laugh. Neither did Steve. The facility loomed ahead by mid-morning. From the outside, it looked like any other warehouse: grey concrete, wide loading bays, blank walls. But inside, it was all foundation. Reinforced doors thicker than bank vaults. Hallways lined with blast shutters. Security checkpoints that scanned every inch of you before letting you pass. The hum of suppressants pulsed faint in the air, layered deep beneath the walls. The convoy rolled straight into the motor pool. My soldiers spread instantly, securing the perimeter, rifles up, eyes steady. Shield agents fanned out behind them, their expressions tight as they realized just how outclassed they looked inside these walls. The vault was rolled down the ramp, its suppressants glowing brighter as it crossed into the facility's field. For the first time since Stuttgart, the staff's pulsing dimmed. Banner's monitors steadied. He exhaled slowly. It's calmer here. Steve nodded. Safer. Fury's eye swept the room, sharp as ever. We'll see. The walk to the vault was slow and deliberate. The staff's container rolled down reinforced corridors, past blast doors that sealed automatically after we passed. My soldiers led the way, silent, rifles raised. Shield agents trailed awkwardly, their nerves obvious. Steve kept his shield ready, eyes sharp on every angle. Banner hunched low, muttering numbers under his breath as his monitors shifted. Stark kept poking at the vault's clamps, earning sharp looks from both Banner and Steve. Finally, we reached the chamber. The vault. It was a massive room carved into the bedrock, walls layered with suppressants, barriers thick enough to withstand artillery. The centerpiece was a containment cell unlike anything S.H.I.E.L.D. had ever built: triple seals, reinforced suppressants, automated lockdowns tied directly to my command. The staff's container was rolled into the center of the cell. The clamps clicked, the seals hissed, and the suppressants roared to life. The glow dimmed further, its pulse steadying until it was barely a flicker. Banner stared at his monitors, wide-eyed. The resonance, it's almost gone. The suppressants are neutralizing it. Steve exhaled slowly, his shoulders loosening. Then it's secure. Stark grinned faintly. Well, would you look at that? Mystery Man actually wasn't bluffing. I smirked, leaning against the railing. Told you. We box monsters for breakfast. Fury didn't smile. But his eye lingered on the suppressants, then on me. He hated it. But he couldn't argue with what he saw. We stayed in the vault chamber for hours. Banner ran test after test, muttering to himself as he scribbled notes. Steve walked the perimeter, checking every angle, his shield always at the ready. Stark hovered between Banner's monitors and the vault's clamps, poking, prodding, commenting every step of the way. Fury paced like a hawk, his gaze never leaving the staff. And me? I kept the pressure light, teasing, but sharp when needed. See, Nick? Safe as houses. If the staff sneezes, this place eats it alive. No leaks, no explosions, no gods busting through the ceiling. He shot me a glare. Don't get cocky. I smirked. Too late. By the time evening rolled in, the staff was fully sealed. The suppressants hummed steady, the glow dimmed to almost nothing. Banner's monitors finally stopped spiking. Steve finally allowed himself to sit. Stark finally ran out of quips. Fury stood at the edge of the vault, his coat heavy, his one good eye locked on me. "You've got it in your box," he said slowly. "But don't forget this is still S.H.I.E.L.D.'s case. You don't own it." I grinned wide, cheerful again. "Relax, Fury. Call it joint custody. You can visit on weekends." Steve shook his head faintly. Banner groaned. Stark snorted. And the staff pulsed once, faint but sharp, like it was laughing at all of us. Chapter 42, Banner in the Vault. The hum of the suppressants was louder in the vault chamber than anywhere else in the facility. It wasn't an irritating sound, it was steady, rhythmic, a low thrum that vibrated faintly in my chest every time I stepped inside. To anyone else, it probably sounded like a machine room. To me, it sounded like security. Every pulse meant the staff was being smothered, its glow dulled until it barely flickered inside its container. Bruce Banner sat at the console, hunched over the bank of monitors. His glasses slid halfway down his nose as he scrolled through readouts, muttering under his breath. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, pausing only when he scribbled notes in the pad beside him. Steve Rogers stood just behind him, his shield strapped to his back, his arms crossed as he kept his steady gaze fixed on the containment cell. He hadn't taken his eyes off the staff since Banner started working. The man could have been carved from stone if not for the subtle way his jaw shifted every time the staff's glow pulsed brighter than usual. Stark was the opposite. He was restless, leaning against the railings one moment, pacing around the vault the next, tossing a wrench in his hand like it was a toy. Every time Banner muttered something too quietly, Stark leaned in, grinning. "So what's the verdict, Doc? Magic wand or glorified flashlight?" Banner didn't look up. "Neither. Both. I don't know yet." I leaned casually against the railing near the console, smirking faintly. That's the spirit. Nothing like absolute certainty to keep the mood calm. Banner shot me a look over his glasses. "Science isn't certainty. It's process." I grinned. And here I thought it was explosions and late nights. He groaned, going back to his screens. The first few hours were nothing but calibration. Banner ran scan after scan, adjusting the suppressant's frequency to see how the staff responded. The glow dimmed, brightened, pulsed sharper, but the suppressants always won. The hum thickened every time the staff pushed harder, smothering it back into stillness. Steve barely moved. He stayed by the railing, eyes locked on the staff, his presence quiet but steady. His discipline was a comfort. Even Banner seemed less jittery with Steve's solid weight behind him. Stark, on the other hand, couldn't sit still. He peppered Banner with questions, half serious, half sarcasm. "So what you're telling me is this thing's basically a cosmic Wi-Fi router?" Banner pinched the bridge of his nose. "That's not what I'm saying." "Sure sounds like it. Pulses, resonance, connections across space. Somebody check if Loki's staff has a data plan." I chuckled. "Bet it gets better reception than my radio team out in the field." Steve sighed quietly, but didn't look away from the staff. By midday, Banner had real data. He tapped the monitor, his voice low but sharper now. "Here. Look at this." Every time the suppressants cycle down to baseline, the staff's resonance spikes. It's not random, it's patterned. Like it's syncing with something. Steve frowned. "The cube?" Banner nodded. "Has to be. The signatures are nearly identical. It's drawing on the same source, just weaker. Like the staff's a conduit." Stark grinned. "So Loki's been walking around with a portable cube knockoff." "Figures." I leaned closer to the glass, smirking faintly at the faint blue glow. "Portable or not, it's a key. Banner's right, if it's resonating with the cube, it means it knows where it is." Fury's voice cut in from behind us. He'd been silent most of the time, pacing at the back of the chamber like a shadow. And that means so does Loki. Whatever game he's playing, this is part of it. Banner rubbed his temples, muttering. If we can map the resonance properly, we might be able to trace it back. Not perfectly, but close enough to get a direction. Steve straightened. Then we do it. Banner hesitated. It's not that simple. The suppressants are interfering with the readings. To map it accurately, we'd have to lower them. Just a little. Long enough to get clean data. The room went still. Steve's jaw tightened. That's dangerous. Stark raised an eyebrow. Dangerous is my middle name. I smirked faintly. What's your first name then? Reckless. Banner looked at me, his voice low. We can't get answers without risk. I let the silence stretch, my grin fading. Then I clapped my hands once, sharp. All right. We lower it. But only under full guard. Every soldier on rotation, suppressants ready to snap back up at the first flicker. Banner gets his data, then we slam the door. Steve gave me a hard look but didn't argue. Fury just narrowed his eye. The preparations took another hour. My soldiers rotated in, 30 strong, rifles steady, their black armor gleaming under the vault lights. Shield agents ringed the perimeter, their nerves obvious as they glanced at my squads. The suppressants were recalibrated, Banner's monitors primed to catch every spike. Steve stood directly in front of the containment glass, shield on his arm, his stance unyielding. Stark perched at the console beside Banner, grinning like he was about to watch fireworks. Fury stood at the back again, his coat heavy, his gaze sharp. And me? I stood just behind Banner, my smirk faint, my tone light. All right, Doc. Time to see if your science makes gods nervous. Banner swallowed, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He tapped a few commands, and the hum shifted. The suppressants dimmed. The staff's glow flared instantly, pulsing bright and sharp against the glass. The monitors screamed with spikes, numbers flying across the screen faster than Banner could read. He muttered frantically, scribbling notes. It's working. The resonance is stabilizing, no, synchronizing. It's reaching for something. The cube, it has to be. The glow surged, brighter than ever. The suppressants strained, the hum cracking as the weapon pressed against its restraints. Steve raised his shield. My soldiers snapped their rifles up. Stark leaned in closer, eyes wide. Fury barked. Shut it down. Banner's voice was sharp, desperate. Not yet. I stepped closer, my voice steady but firm. You've got 10 seconds, Banner. Then I kill the power myself. He nodded frantically, muttering as he scribbled. Almost got it. The glow spiked one last time. Then Banner slammed the key. The suppressants roared back to full, the glow snuffed to a faint flicker. The hum steadied, loud and heavy. The monitors leveled, numbers stabilizing. The vault went still. Banner sagged back in his chair, sweat dripping down his brow, his glasses slipping. He clutched the notepad tight. Steve lowered his shield slowly, his eyes never leaving the staff. Stark whistled low, grinning. Now that's what I call a light show. Fury stepped forward, his coat swaying. His eye was sharp on Banner. Well. Banner's voice was hoarse but steady. It's the cube. The resonance is direct. The staff isn't just powered by it, it's linked. If we follow the signal, we can find the cube. The room went silent. Then I grinned, clapping Banner on the shoulder. Not bad, Doc. Remind me to buy you a coffee after we save the world. He groaned. I just want to sleep. Steve shook his head faintly. You did good. Stark smirked. Not bad for a guy who doesn't even want to be here. Banner glared weakly at him. Fury just stared at the staff, his jaw tight. And me? I was still grinning. We had a lead. Chapter 43, Tracking the Cube. The vault was quiet. Too quiet. The staff pulsed faintly in its cell, the suppressants humming steady. Banner hunched at the console, sweat on his brow, scribbling in his notes. Steve stood near the glass, shield steady on his arm, eyes locked forward. Stark leaned against the railing, arms folded, smirking like he already knew what Banner was about to say. Fury paced in the back, coat heavy, his eye never leaving me. Banner's voice was low, shaky but controlled. It's not just resonance. It's a beacon. The staff is locked to the cube, same frequency, same pulse. If we follow the signal, we'll find it. Steve turned his head slightly. How soon? Banner swallowed. Now. The longer we wait, the further Loki moves it. But the readings are strong. I can plot a direction. Stark chuckled. Plot a direction? Sounds like we're following breadcrumbs. I stepped forward, my boots echoing against the steel. My voice was calm, low, steady. Wick's cadence, sharp and simple. We move. Now. Fury turned, his jaw tight. That's reckless. You don't know what you're walking into. I met his eye, unflinching. We don't wait. He moves the cube, we lose it. Steve nodded once, his voice firm. He's right. Loki's already ahead of us. We can't waste time. Fury's eye shifted between us, then back to Banner. Can you keep the signal? Banner pushed his glasses up, nodding reluctantly. Yes. It's faint, but stable. I can triangulate as we move. I turned, my voice flat. Prep the transports. My soldiers moved instantly, boots thudding in rhythm as they filed out. Shield agents followed slower, their nerves sharp. Stark pushed off the railing, smirking. Guess we're all going on a road trip. Dibs on auxiliary. Steve ignored him. Banner groaned quietly. And me? I walked out without another word. The convoy rolled out within the hour. Foundation transports led the line, armor black and heavy, engines rumbling low. Shield trucks followed, Stark's car slipped into the middle like it was his personal parade float. My squads rode silent, rifles cradled, eyes forward behind their helmets. Shield agents whispered nervously, their chatter filling the gaps my men left quiet. I rode up front, in the lead jeep. Steve sat beside me, his shield across his lap. Banner was in the back seat, tablet balanced on his knees, eyes glued to the flickering signal. Stark's voice crackled across the comms every few minutes, throwing out quips no one asked for. Banner's voice finally broke the silence. It's steady. Northeast. Stronger with every mile. Steve nodded. Then we're close. I kept my eyes on the road, my voice calm. What's waiting for us? Banner shifted nervously. I don't know. But if the staff's resonance is this strong, the cube's active. Loki won't leave it unguarded. Steve's jaw tightened. Then we'll be ready. Stark's voice cut in, smug. Speak for yourself, Cap. I didn't bring my Sunday best. Just the flying tank I wear every day. I keyed the comms, my tone sharp. Stay focused, Stark. For once, he didn't reply. The signal led us to a remote industrial site, tucked into the edge of a crumbling city block. Concrete walls cracked with age, windows shattered, metal rusted. It looked abandoned. It wasn't. Banner's voice was tight. It's inside. The readings are strongest here. Steve scanned the perimeter, his eyes narrowing. What's our play? I stepped out of the jeep, boots crunching against gravel. My soldiers fanned out instantly, rifles raised, silent as shadows. Shield agents followed clumsier, their weapons twitching. I spoke low, sharp. 2 squads. Flank the east and west. 3rd squad, rear. Shield holds perimeter. Stark overhead. Banner with me. Steve nodded. I'll breach with you. I turned, my tone flat. Stay on my 6. He didn't argue. We moved in fast. The doors groaned as my men forced them open. The air inside was thick with dust, stale and heavy. Concrete walls stretched high, steel beams rusted above. The hum of machinery echoed faint, unnatural in the stillness. And in the center of the chamber sat the cube. It pulsed bright on a pedestal of alien metal, its glow sharp, almost blinding. The same resonance as the staff, only stronger. Banner's tablet screamed with readings. Stark's suit roared overhead, his voice crackling through comms. Bingo! Glowing cube, dead center. Anyone else feel like we just stepped into a trap? Steve raised his shield, his voice steady. We move together. Eyes up. I drew my rifle, my voice calm. Contain it. Fast. Then the walls shifted. Doors slammed open. Chitauri spilled into the chamber, their armor gleaming, their weapons glowing faint. Their shrieks filled the air, sharp and alien. Steve snapped his shield up. Stark dove low, repulsors flaring. My soldiers opened fire instantly, rifles thundering in perfect rhythm. The cube pulsed brighter. The fight was chaos. Steve charged forward, his shield slamming Chitauri aside. Stark swooped low, blasts tearing through their ranks. My squads boxed them in, their fire tight, every shot precise. Shield agents scrambled at the edges, less precise but holding their ground. Banner crouched low behind the console, his tablet still clutched tight. His voice cracked over comms. The cube's destabilizing. We can't just leave it there. Steve blocked a blast with his shield, his voice steady. Then move it. I dropped 2 Chitauri with clean bursts, my voice calm even in the chaos. Banner. Can you contain it? He looked up, eyes wide. Not for long. I turned, sharp. Long enough. He swallowed hard, nodding. Stark's voice cut in, sharp now. We've got more incoming. Get that cube out or this whole block's toast. Steve planted his shield, holding the line. My soldiers surged forward, rifles spitting fire, their formation unbroken even as the Chitauri pressed harder. I moved to Banner, covering him as he scrambled to the console. His fingers flew across the keys, muttering numbers and equations I didn't follow. The cube pulsed brighter, the glow filling the chamber. He shouted. I've got it. But once I disconnect, we move fast. Steve called out, voice steady through the roar. Do it. I leaned down, my voice sharp. Now. Banner slammed the key. The cube dimmed, sealed in a containment cradle that snapped around it with a hiss of suppressants. The glow stabilized, its resonance fading into a steady pulse. The Chitauri shrieked, staggering back as if the connection had been cut. My soldiers surged, rifles cutting them down in perfect rhythm. Steve slammed his shield forward, Stark's blasts lit the chamber, and within moments the last alien fell. The cube's glow dimmed to a faint, steady light. The room went silent. Steve exhaled, lowering his shield. His voice was calm. It's secure. Banner slumped against the console, sweat dripping down his face. For now. Stark hovered low, his visor pulling back to reveal a wide grin. Well. That was fun. Who's buying drinks? I stood over the cradle, staring at the cube's steady glow. My voice was low, calm, final. We move it. Now. Fury's voice crackled over comms, sharp as ever. Bring it in. Straight to the carrier. I keyed the channel, my tone flat. No. It goes to the vault. The line went silent. Then Fury's voice came back, colder. We'll talk about that. I didn't answer. Chapter 44, The Vault for the Cube. The cube glowed faint inside the cradle, its light pulsing against the steel like a heartbeat. The containment seals hissed steady, suppressants layered across its surface in waves. Banner's monitors flickered with faint spikes but nothing out of control. The Chitauri corpses still smoked on the ground around us, the stench of burnt metal and alien flesh thick in the air. My soldiers stood in formation, rifles raised, armor gleaming under the dim industrial lights. Silent. Steady. Shield agents hovered behind them, less precise, their rifles twitching as they glanced at the cube. Steve stood with his shield strapped across his back, his jaw set, his gaze locked on the cradle. Banner leaned against the console, still catching his breath. Stark floated low in his armor, his visor peeled back, smirk on his face. Fury's voice cut sharp through the comms. Bring it to the heli-carrier. Now. I looked at the cube, then at my men. My voice was calm, low, unflinching. No. The line went quiet. Fury's voice came back colder. That wasn't a request. I spoke flat, steady. It goes to the Foundation vault. Strongest containment we have. Safer there than floating in the sky. Steve's head turned slightly, his eyes narrowing. He didn't argue. Banner swallowed hard, adjusting his glasses. He's not wrong. The carrier wasn't designed for something like this. If the cube destabilizes there. He trailed off, shaking his head. Stark grinned. Gotta admit, Wick's got a point. Big scary glow box doesn't belong in a flying fortress. One bad sneeze and you're picking pieces out of the ocean. Fury's voice snapped, sharp. You're going against direct shield command. I met Steve's gaze. Calm. Even. Then I keyed the COMM. I'm going to keep it alive. That's all that matters. Silence. Then Fury's voice, low. You better pray you're right. The transfer was immediate. My squads rolled the cradle onto a transport, reinforced clamps locking it tight. The suppressants hummed louder inside the armored container, layers stacked to smother every flicker of the cube's light. Shield agents tried to muscle in close, but my soldiers held the line, silent, rifles angled just enough to remind them who was really in control. Steve stood at the ramp, his shield across his chest, his eyes sharp on the cube. Banner hunched at the side with his tablet, muttering readings under his breath. Stark leaned against the container, his smirk wide. I walked up the ramp, boots heavy against the steel. My voice was calm. We move. Straight to New York. Steve nodded once. Then we stay tight. No room for mistakes. Banner groaned quietly. Mistakes are all I see right now. Stark chuckled. Relax, Doc. If it blows up, we'll all be too dead to care. Steve shot him a hard look. Stark just smirked wider. I sat across from the cradle, my gaze locked on the cube's faint glow through the small reinforced window. My voice was low, even. Eyes open. Everyone stays sharp. The convoy rolled hard through the city outskirts. Transports rumbled down empty highways, their engines growling in unison. Foundation jeeps boxed the lead truck tight, shield vehicles trailing at the rear. My soldiers stayed silent, rifles at the ready, helmets gleaming under the harsh streetlights. Steve sat beside me in the lead truck, his shield resting steady across his lap. His jaw was tight, his gaze unblinking. Banner hunched behind us, his tablet glowing in the dark. Stark's voice crackled over comms every few minutes, throwing out quips like he was narrating a game show. Banner finally muttered, his voice low. "The cube's stable. The suppressants are holding. But, it's not quiet. It's still reaching. Always reaching." Steve's eyes didn't move from the road. "Then we don't give it time to find anything." I spoke calm, final. "It won't. We won't let it." The facility doors yawned open when we arrived. The convoy rolled straight into the motor pool, steel clanging under the weight of the transports. My soldiers moved instantly, forming perimeter lines, rifles raised. Shield agents followed slower, their weapons twitching. The cradle was rolled down the ramp, suppressants humming loud as it crossed into the facility's deeper fields. For the first time since we'd touched it, the cube's glow dimmed further, almost subdued. Banner's monitors leveled out, his shoulders easing just a fraction. He exhaled, voice soft. "It's calmer here. Like it's being smothered." Steve nodded, his gaze steady. "Good. Then let's keep it that way." Stark hopped down from his car, smirking as he looked around. "Nice setup. Real secret dungeon vibes. Bet you throw wild parties down here." I walked beside the cradle, my boots echoing in the wide chamber. My voice was calm, even. "No parties. Just cages." Stark chuckled. "Yeah, that tracks." The cube's path through the facility was slow, deliberate. Blast doors sealed behind us as we moved. Suppressants thickened in the air. Steel groaned under the weight of the armored container as it rolled deeper into the vault wing. My soldiers marched in silence, their rifles steady, their eyes never leaving the cradle. Shield agents trailed, their unease obvious in every glance. Steve walked tight to the container, his shield ready. Banner muttered readings from his tablet, his voice quick, nervous. Stark circled the cradle like a hawk, his smirk sharp, his eyes calculating. Finally, the chamber opened before us. The vault. Thicker than the staff's cell. Suppressants layered triple deep. Steel walls braced into bedrock. The cradle rolled into the center, clamps locking, seals hissing, suppressants roaring to life. The cube's glow dimmed to its lowest yet, a faint pulse like a dying ember. Banner stared at his monitors, wide-eyed. "It's almost neutralized. The suppressants here, they're crushing it." Steve exhaled slow. "Then it's secure." Stark grinned faintly. "Well, look at that. Wick wasn't bluffing. You really do keep all the shiny toys." I stood in front of the glass, my voice calm, final. "It's safe here. It stays here." Steve nodded once, steady. Banner muttered agreement under his breath. Stark chuckled, still smirking. Fury's voice cut through the comms, sharp as a blade. "You've made your choice. I hope you can live with it." I stared at the cube, unblinking. My voice was low, even. "I can." The room stayed silent. The cube's glow pulsed faint, trapped under layers of suppressant. And we all knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 45, Banner and the Cube. The cube pulsed faint inside the chamber. The suppressants roared steady, their low hum vibrating in the walls and through the steel floor. The glow was dulled now, smothered under layers of containment. Still, every time it flickered brighter, Banner's monitors jumped, his pen scratched faster across his notes, and Steve's shield angled slightly higher. Bruce Banner had been at the console for hours already. His glasses kept slipping down his nose, his shoulders hunched under the fluorescent lights. He hadn't looked away from the readouts once. Steve Rogers stood just behind him, posture upright, shield strapped to his arm. His eyes locked on the cube, his jaw tight, his stance immovable. Stark was a problem from the start. He leaned against the railings, arms crossed, making comments every few minutes, smirking at every spike on the monitors like this was his personal comedy show. And me? I stood near the glass, my eyes fixed on the cube. Calm. Silent. Watching. Fury's voice came over comms. Banner belongs on the carrier. This isn't his lab. I keyed the channel, my voice flat. He stays here. With the cube. A pause. Then Fury's voice came back colder. You're making a mistake. I didn't reply. Banner muttered to himself, jotting down notes. The suppressants aren't just stabilizing it. They're altering the resonance. Narrowing it. Almost like a filter. If I can adjust the readings. Stark cut in, grinning. Translation: the big scary glow box sings a different tune in Wick's man cave. Banner pinched the bridge of his nose. That's not what I said. I stepped closer, my voice low. Banner. Focus. What can it do? He looked up, startled, then swallowed. Right now? Nothing. It's contained. But with these suppressants, I can map its energy output safely. Before, it was all noise. Here, it's structured. I might even be able to isolate how it interacts with space. Steve's voice was steady. In English. Banner hesitated, then spoke carefully. It could open doors. Anywhere. The room went silent. Stark whistled low. Well, that's not terrifying at all. I spoke calm, even. Keep working. Banner nodded, hunched back over his monitors. Hours bled into the night. Banner barely left his chair, only shifting to adjust a sensor or scribble another line in his notebook. Steve stayed steady by the glass, shield never lowering, his eyes fixed on the cube like he expected it to leap out at any moment. Stark disappeared for an hour, then came back with a cup of coffee for Banner and a smug grin that Steve ignored. I didn't move much. Just paced slow around the vault, watching the suppressants hum, the cube pulse, my soldiers rotate guards with mechanical precision. Shield agents hovered at the edges, their presence tense, their eyes darting to me whenever they thought I wasn't looking. Banner muttered again. If I can adjust the field just slightly, I might be able to test its reaction to. Steve cut in sharp. Test? That sounds like risk. Banner looked up quickly. Controlled risk. The suppressants are holding. But if I don't push, I'll never get clean data. This might be the only chance we have to understand it. I stepped closer, voice flat. How much risk? He swallowed. Minimal. Maybe a spike. Nothing the vault can't handle. Stark grinned. Sounds like fun. Let him play, Cap. What's the worst that could happen? Steve shot him a glare. You don't get to joke about this. Stark just smirked wider. I looked at Banner, my voice calm. Do it. Steve exhaled slowly but didn't argue. Banner adjusted the suppressants. The hum shifted lower, deeper. The cube's glow pulsed brighter, pushing faint against the containment glass. The monitors spiked, numbers climbing fast. Banner muttered, his pen flying. Yes, it's stabilizing. The suppressants are forcing the resonance into a narrower band. I can see the alignment now. The cube it's locking onto coordinates. Actual locations. This isn't random. It's mapping. Steve's grip tightened on his shield. Mapping what? Banner looked up, eyes wide. The universe. The cube pulsed again, brighter than before. The suppressants roared louder, pressing it back, forcing the glow to dim. The monitors screamed for a moment, then steadied. Banner sagged back in his chair, sweat dripping down his brow. It's incredible. Terrifying. But incredible. The cube doesn't just open doors. It knows where to open them. Steve's voice was steady, quiet. And Loki wants to use it. Stark smirked. Of course he does. If I had a magic GPS for space, I'd use it too. I stared at the cube through the glass, my voice low, final. He won't. Banner kept working through the night. Steve stayed close, never moving far from the glass. Stark wandered in and out, sometimes bringing tools, sometimes coffee, sometimes just to poke Banner with sarcastic questions. Fury checked in over comms every few hours, his voice always sharp, always angry. And me? I never left the vault. I watched the cube pulse, Banner scribble, Steve stand steady, Stark smirk, Fury scowl. I watched my soldiers rotate without a word, rifles steady, eyes forward. I watched the suppressants hum, smothering the glow, keeping it from reaching further. By morning, Banner had filled 3 notebooks. His voice was hoarse, his eyes bloodshot, but his hands still moved quick across the console. He muttered softly. With more time, I can isolate the exact frequency. Build a tracker. Pinpoint the cube's location anywhere. Even across worlds. Steve's voice was steady. Then we give you that time. Stark grinned. Looks like Doc Banner just made himself indispensable. Banner groaned quietly. I spoke calm, final. He doesn't leave this vault. Not until it's done. Steve nodded once. Stark just smirked. Banner swallowed but didn't argue. The cube pulsed faint against the glass. The suppressants roared steady. And we all knew the clock was ticking. Chapter 46, Suppressants lowered. The vault chamber was colder than usual. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it was the way the suppressants hummed lower, deeper, vibrating in my chest every time the cube pulsed. Or maybe it was Banner's voice, quieter, sharper, his muttering filling the silence as his fingers tapped the console. The tesseract sat in the center, its glow faint but insistent. Every pulse pressed against the glass, fighting the suppressants smothering it. My soldiers lined the chamber walls, rifles ready, armor black under the lights. Shield agents hovered near the exits, tense, their eyes darting between the cube and me. Steve stood at the railing, shield strapped across his back, his gaze steady on the containment cell. He hadn't moved in hours. Banner leaned forward at the console, his glasses slipping, sweat dotting his brow. His voice was low, hoarse from hours of muttering. If I bring the suppressants down further, just a little, I can isolate the frequency shift. It's not just energy, it's structure. Almost like language. Stark's voice broke in from the far side of the console. He was grinning, tossing a wrench in his hand like it was a toy. So the cosmic glow box is trying to talk. Great. Anybody here speak fluent cube? Banner sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. It's not words. It's alignment. The way it stabilizes when it locks onto a coordinate, it's telling us where it wants to go. I stepped closer, my boots echoing against steel. My voice was calm. Lower it. Steve turned his head slightly. That's dangerous. I didn't blink. So is waiting. Banner swallowed, nodding. His fingers tapped the console, and the hum shifted. The suppressants dimmed. The cube flared brighter instantly, blue light flooding the chamber. The glass vibrated faintly, the glow pressing harder than before. The monitors screamed with numbers, spikes climbing higher than any previous run. Banner's eyes widened. His pen scratched furiously across his notes. It's locking, yes, it's aligning to something. A point. Not random. Not abstract. It's consistent. Steve raised his shield slightly, his stance shifting. It doesn't look stable. Stark smirked. Relax, Capsicle. It's just a glow-up. Steve shot him a glare. Stark didn't stop smiling. I didn't move. My voice was steady. Banner. Talk. He muttered fast, frantic. The cube, it's mapping coordinates, adjusting resonance. I think it's pulling from both sides. Wherever it's connecting to, they're pulling back. It's mutual. Steve's grip tightened on his shield. So someone else is on the other side. Banner swallowed. Yes. The cube pulsed again, brighter, harder. The glass groaned faintly. The suppressants roared higher, fighting to keep it smothered. Banner's voice cracked. I need more time, just a few more seconds. I stepped closer, my tone sharp. 10 seconds. No more. His hands flew over the keyboard, sweat dripping down his face. The cube pulsed again, the monitors spiking higher, alarms shrieking faint in the chamber. My soldiers snapped their rifles up, silent, their helmets turning toward the glow. Shield agents backed further against the walls, their nerves raw. Steve braced his shield, his stance solid. Stark leaned forward, visor sliding down over his eyes, his smirk fading just slightly. The cube pulsed again, the glow flooding the chamber. Banner shouted. Got it. He slammed the key. The suppressants roared back to full, the glow snuffed to a faint flicker. The hum steadied, low and heavy, vibrating through the floor. The alarms stopped. The vault was quiet again. Banner collapsed back in his chair, glasses slipping down his nose, sweat soaking his shirt. He clutched his notebook tight, his hands trembling. Steve exhaled slowly, lowering his shield. His jaw was tight, his gaze still locked on the cube. Stark peeled his visor back, grinning again. Well. That was fun. Who's up for round 2? Banner groaned, running a hand down his face. No. Not tonight. I need to analyze this. I stepped closer to the console, my voice calm, even. What did you see? Banner's hand shook as he flipped his notes open. Coordinates. Clearer than before. It's consistent. The cube isn't just random energy, it's a bridge. It's pointing to one location again and again. Steve frowned. Where? Banner hesitated. I don't know yet. But it's fixed. Stable. Wherever it's connecting to, it's not moving. Stark grinned wider. So we've got a cosmic homing beacon. Great. Let's just hope it's not dialing 1-800 Chitori. Steve shot him another glare. This isn't a joke. I leaned forward, my voice flat. How soon can you finish? Banner swallowed. Give me a day. Maybe less. If I can run the resonance through the suppressants again, I can triangulate. I'll know where the cube is talking to. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I nodded. Do it. Steve stepped closer, his voice low but steady. If you keep pushing him like this, he'll break. I met his gaze. Calm. Even. Then I'll catch him. Steve didn't reply. The rest of the night was quiet. Banner slumped at the console, scribbling notes even as his eyelids drooped. Steve stayed steady near the glass, his eyes sharp on the cube. Stark came and went, sometimes returning with tools, sometimes coffee, sometimes just another smirk. Fury checked in once, his voice sharp, angry, but I didn't answer. My soldiers rotated guard shifts with mechanical precision. Shield agents lingered near the exits, their nerves raw every time the cube pulsed. I stayed by the glass, watching the glow. Calm. Silent. Always watching. By morning, Banner had mapped half the coordinates. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking, but his voice was steady. I can finish this. I just need more runs. More suppressant cycles. The cube it wants to connect. If I can ride that pull, I can see exactly where. Steve frowned, his voice firm. And if it pulls harder than you can stop? Banner looked down. Then, we'll have a problem. Stark chuckled, leaning against the railing. Understatement of the century. I spoke calm, final. Then we stop it before that happens. Steve's jaw tightened. And if we can't? I stared at the cube. My voice was low, steady. Then I'll end it. The room went quiet. Banner swallowed, turning back to his monitors. Steve didn't look away from the glass. Stark's smirk faded just slightly. The cube pulsed faint, steady. And the suppressants hummed louder, smothering it. Chapter 47, another cycle. The vault was heavy with silence. The suppressants hummed deep in the walls, their vibration steady under my boots. The cube sat in the center, its glow faint but insistent, pressing against the glass in dull, steady waves. My soldiers lined the chamber, rifles steady, helmets down, their presence a wall of silence. Shield agents stood behind them, twitching every time the cube flickered. Banner was back at the console. His eyes were red, bloodshot from lack of sleep, but his hands didn't stop moving. His notes sprawled across the desk in messy lines, half pages covered in frantic scrawl. He muttered under his breath, pushing his glasses higher on his nose as his fingers tapped quick across the keys. Steve stood steady at the railing, shield strapped to his arm, his eyes locked on the containment glass. He hadn't moved since Banner powered up the system again. Stark leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, his smirk lazy but his eyes sharp. He tossed a wrench in his hand, catching it without looking. I walked to the console, boots heavy against steel. My voice was low, calm. Banner. Ready. Banner swallowed hard, nodding. Yes. One more cycle. I can finish triangulation. But I need more suppressant drop than last time. Just a little. Steve's voice was steady. That's too dangerous. Banner looked up, his voice quiet but certain. Without it, I won't get clean data. I can't map it. I met his eyes, calm. Do it. Steve turned his head, his jaw tight. You're gambling. I looked at him. My tone was flat. I don't gamble. I end things. Steve didn't reply. Banner turned back to the console, his hands shaking faintly. He adjusted the fields. The hum shifted, lower, deeper. The suppressants dimmed. The cube flared. Blue light flooded the chamber, bright and sharp, pressing against the glass until it vibrated. The monitors screamed with spikes, numbers climbing fast, alarms blinking red across the console. Banner's voice cracked, frantic. It's aligning. Yes, it's clearer this time, locking onto fixed coordinates. Steve raised his shield, his stance shifting. It doesn't look stable. Stark grinned faintly, visor sliding down over his eyes. Relax, Capsicle. Just a cube having a mood swing. Steve shot him a glare. Stark didn't drop the smirk. I stepped closer to the console, my voice calm. Banner. How long? His fingers flew across the keys. Seconds. I just need seconds. The cube pulsed harder, brighter, the glow filling the chamber. The glass groaned faintly, cracks of stress whispering through the steel frame. The suppressants roared louder, fighting to smother it. My soldiers snapped their rifles up in unison, silent, ready. Shield agents pressed back against the walls, their nerves raw. Steve braced, his shield forward, his posture unyielding. The cube pulsed again, brighter than ever. The glow lit Banner's face, his glasses reflecting pure blue. His pen scratched furiously, his muttering faster, sharper. I've got it, yes, coordinates stable this time, it's fixed, it's consistent. I leaned in, my voice sharp. Now, Banner. He slammed the key. The suppressants roared back to full. The glow dimmed instantly, smothered to a faint flicker. The alarms cut off, the monitors steadied, the glass stopped shaking. The vault was silent again. Banner sagged back in his chair, breathing heavy, sweat dripping down his face. His notebook slipped from his hand, pages covered in numbers and frantic scrawl. Steve lowered his shield slowly, his jaw tight. He didn't look away from the cube. Stark pulled his visor back, grinning faintly. Well, that was exciting. Anybody else feel like they just rode a roller coaster? Banner groaned, his voice hoarse. I have it. The coordinates. Clear. The cube's bridge, it's locked to one location. Steve stepped closer, his voice low but steady. Where? Banner fumbled for his notebook, flipping pages with shaking hands. Not Earth. Not our system. It's further. Much further. A stable point, consistent across every cycle. It's another world. The room went still. Stark whistled low. So our little blue box is dialing long distance. Steve's jaw clenched tighter. And Loki wants to use it. Banner nodded, swallowing hard. Yes. That's what it's built for. To open a bridge to that location. If he has the cube and the staff together, he can open it wide. I stared at the cube through the glass. My voice was calm, even. How soon? Banner hesitated. If he gets the cube, hours. Maybe less. He knows where to point it now. I'm certain. Steve's voice was sharp. Then we don't let him get it. Stark smirked faintly. Well, we've got half the recipe. Shame he's missing the other half. Banner's hand trembled as he wiped his face. You don't understand. The staff, it doesn't just channel the cube. It controls it. Whoever holds the staff commands the cube. The silence was heavy. I spoke low, steady. Then Loki can't touch it. Steve's jaw tightened. We'll stop him. Stark chuckled, but his smirk was thinner. Hope your guys are ready. Because I get the feeling we're about to have company. Banner slumped back, exhausted but clutching his notes like his life depended on them. I looked at the cube. Calm. Silent. My voice was final. We'll be ready. Chapter 48, Locking the Vault. The vault chamber was steady again. The suppressants hummed low, pressing down on the cube's glow until it flickered faint and subdued inside the containment cell. My soldiers stood like statues along the walls, rifles raised, silent, helmets fixed forward. Shield agents lingered behind them, uneasy, glancing from the cube to me. Banner slumped at the console, his eyes red, his notes spread out in messy stacks across the desk. His voice was hoarse, muttering every few minutes as he tapped at the keyboard. Steve stood near the railing, shield strapped to his arm, gaze locked on the cube. Stark leaned back against the far wall, smirking faint but restless. I broke the silence, my voice calm, clipped. We reinforce. Now. Steve turned his head slightly. What's your plan? I looked at the cube, then at him. Double squads on every entrance. Layer suppressants deeper. Lock the vault. Nobody gets in. Nobody touches it. Steve nodded once, steady. I'll take the front line. Banner groaned quietly, pushing his glasses up his nose. If you're expecting Loki, you're right. He knows. He's already pulling toward it. We have hours. Maybe less. Stark chuckled. Well, that's comforting. Anybody else hear the countdown ticking, or is it just me? Steve shot him a glare. Stark kept smiling. I keyed the COMM, my tone flat. Command. Triple perimeter outside. Drones overhead. Every entrance sealed. No blind spots. The reply came instantly. Yes, sir. My soldiers moved at once, their boots thudding in rhythm as they filed out, leaving only the inner guard in place. The hum of machinery filled the silence as blast shutters sealed down the hallways, heavier locks clanging shut. The entire facility shifted into defense posture, layer by layer. 2 hours later, the vault was alive with activity. Foundation engineers moved suppressants into the chamber, installing another layer of emitters around the cube's containment. Their suits hissed as they bolted clamps into the floor, sparks flying under the bright lights. The cube pulsed faintly, its glow pressing harder as if resisting the weight of new barriers. Banner muttered, hunched at his monitors. It doesn't like this. The suppressants are forcing it deeper. It's angry. Steve frowned, his voice steady. Can it break through? Banner shook his head. Not now. But it's pulling harder. Stark strolled past the engineers, his smirk lazy but his eyes sharp. Maybe it's just claustrophobic. Or maybe it doesn't like being wrapped in Wick's oversized security blanket. I walked past him, calm, my voice low. Blankets keep things warm. This keeps it dead. Stark chuckled. Good line. You practice that one. I didn't answer. The vault doors sealed with a final hiss, their reinforced bolts locking deep into the walls. My soldiers checked every angle, their rifles steady, their presence unmoving. The chamber was a fortress now. Steve exhaled slowly, adjusting his grip on his shield. If he comes, he'll hit us hard. I looked at him. Calm. Steady. Then we hit harder. Fury's voice cracked through the comms, sharp, biting. You've gone too far. Pull shield back in, move the cube to the carrier. You're making this worse. I keyed the line, my tone flat. It stays here. You want it on a flying target. I want it buried under steel. Fury's voice was colder. If this fails, it's on you. I stared at the cube through the glass. My voice was calm, final. Then it's on me. The line went dead. By nightfall, the facility was sealed tight. Every corridor was locked with reinforced shutters. Every entry point bristled with soldiers, their rifles steady, drones humming faint overhead. The air was heavy with suppressant fields, pressing down even in the hallways. Inside the vault, Banner hunched at the console, his pen scratching across another page of notes. Steve sat at the railing, shield propped against his leg, his eyes never leaving the cube. Stark sprawled across a chair in the corner, smirk faint as he tossed a wrench from hand to hand. I paced the chamber slow, steady, my boots echoing against steel. My soldiers stood unmoving, silent as stone. The cube pulsed faint, its glow dim under the weight of suppressants. But every so often, it flared brighter, pressing against the glass, the hum of the suppressants rising to smother it. Banner muttered, his voice hoarse. It's trying. Harder every time. It knows it's trapped. Steve's jaw tightened. Then it'll fight harder to get out. Stark grinned faintly. And when it does, we'll all be glow in the dark. I looked at the cube. Calm. Steady. My voice was low. It won't. We rotated watches through the night. Steve never left the chamber. His shield stayed close, his posture steady, his eyes sharp. Banner slumped against the console when exhaustion finally forced him down, but his notes stayed clutched in his hands. Stark wandered in and out, sometimes leaving to tinker with something, sometimes returning with a smirk and coffee. I stayed by the glass. Watching. Waiting. The cube pulsed faint, steady. Suppressants roared louder. And the facility stayed ready. Chapter 49, Taking the Fight. The vault chamber was dim except for the blue glow of the cube. It pulsed faint inside its cell, the suppressants pressing down with steady hums, layered deep into the steel. Banner slumped at the console, his notes spread across the desk, his glasses slipping low on his nose. Steve stood near the railing, shield steady on his arm, his jaw set, his eyes sharp. Stark leaned against the wall, his smirk lazy but his gaze restless. I stood in front of the glass, boots heavy against the floor. My voice was calm. We move on, Loki. Now. Steve's head turned. You're sure about this? I looked at him. Even. Steady. He's pulling to the cube. We cut him off before he gets closer. Banner swallowed, his voice hoarse. The coordinates I pulled, yes, it's fixed. Stable. Loki's signal keeps aligning there. If you go now, you'll find him. But if you wait. I cut him off, voice flat. We don't wait. Stark smirked. Well, good thing I brought the flying tank suit. I was getting bored anyway. Steve gripped his shield tighter. If you're going, I'm going. Banner shook his head, adjusting his glasses. I can't go. I need to stay here. Keep the suppressants balanced. If the cube flares while you're gone. I nodded once. You stay. Keep it buried. Banner exhaled, relieved. I can do that. Steve looked at me. What's the plan? I spoke calm. Foundation squads lead. Heavy armor. Air support above. You and Stark with me. Stark grinned. Finally. Field trip. Steve gave him a sharp look. This isn't a game. Stark chuckled. Could have fooled me. I looked between them. Calm. Steady. We move in 1 hour. The facility came alive. My soldiers prepped transports in the motor pool, black armor gleaming under the floodlights. Crates of weapons rolled out, rifles checked and loaded in perfect rhythm. Suppressants were mounted to vehicles, their low hum filling the air. Drones buzzed overhead, their optics sweeping the dark sky. Steve stood by the ramp, shield strapped to his back, watching as squads moved with silent precision. Stark tinkered with his armor at the far end, pieces snapping into place, his smirk faint as sparks flew from his tools. Banner stayed in the vault, hunched over the console, muttering readings, his voice sharp and low through the comms. I'll keep the suppressants balanced here. If the cube pushes harder, I'll let you know. I walked through the motor pool slow, calm, boots echoing heavy. My voice cut through the noise. Double armor on transports. Suppressants live. Full loadout. If we find him, we box him. Fast. Yes, sir. My soldiers moved faster, rifles clicking as they snapped into place. Steve walked to me, his voice steady. We don't know how many he has with him. I looked at him. Calm. Doesn't matter. We end it. He nodded once. Stark strolled over, his visor sliding into place with a hiss. You really know how to plan a party. But fine, let's go ruin a god's day. Fury's voice cracked through comms. Stand down. This is S.H.I.E.L.D.'s operation. You move without authorization, you'll answer for it. I keyed the line, my tone flat. Not asking permission. Fury's voice grew colder. You're risking everything. I stared at the transport, my soldiers loading in silence. My voice was calm, final. I'll take that risk. The line went dead. We rolled out before dawn. The convoy thundered down empty highways, armored transports boxed tight, drones buzzing overhead. Foundation jeeps flanked us, rifles mounted, their black armor gleaming in the dim light. Steve rode beside me in the lead jeep, shield across his lap, eyes steady on the horizon. Stark soared above, his suit cutting through the clouds, his voice sharp in the comms. Signals clean. No movement yet. But if your nerd's math holds up, we'll be knocking on Loki's door soon. Banner's voice came over the channel, hoarse but clear. The signal's strong. Keep heading north. You're on the right track. Steve adjusted his grip on the shield. We're close. I nodded once. My voice was calm. Stay sharp. We reached the site at sunrise. A remote ridge, forests stretched wide, mist rolling low across the ground. The coordinates pointed to a clearing, empty at first glance. But the drones above caught faint energy readings, pulsing low against the earth. Steve stepped out of the jeep, shield ready. He's here. Stark hovered low, visor scanning. I'm reading a lot of noise. Something's buried under the ground. Big something. Banner's voice crackled over the comms. That's it. He's building a platform. Tesseract resonance is spiking. If he finishes, he'll have a launch point. I looked at the clearing, then at my men. Calm. We ended here. My squads moved in, rifles raised, their formation perfect. Drones circled low, suppressants humming as they locked into place. Steve braced, shield forward. Stark's repulsors glowed, his visor locked ahead. The ground split open. Metal rose from beneath the earth, alien steel, jagged and sharp, pulsing faint with blue light. A platform, half-formed, glowing with the same energy as the cube. And on it stood Loki. He smiled, staff in hand, his eyes sharp, smug. Steve tightened his grip on the shield. There he is. Stark smirked. Showtime. I raised my rifle, calm. Contain him. The fight began. My soldiers opened fire instantly, rifles roaring in perfect rhythm. Suppressants hummed as they spread, fields slamming down across the clearing. Steve charged forward, his shield slamming aside the first Chitauri that spilled out of the ground. Stark swooped low, his blasts tearing through their ranks. Loki laughed, raising his staff, deflecting fire in waves of blue light. The ground shook as more Chitauri poured from the platform, their weapons shrieking. Steve slammed his shield into the ground, holding the line. Stark soared overhead, blasting through swarms with ease. My squads boxed Loki in, their suppressants pushing closer, pressing against his defenses. I moved forward calm, every shot clean, precise. My voice cut through the comms. Focus fire. Push him back. The suppressants roared louder, fields pressing tight. Loki's smile faltered. Steve braced, his shield sparking under another strike. Stark circled above, firing into the platform. My soldiers surged forward, rifles cutting the Chitauri down one by one. The suppressants locked tighter. Loki's glow dimmed. His staff cracked against the pressure. Steve pushed forward, shield slamming hard. Stark's blasts shook the ground. I stepped closer, calm, my voice even. Box him. The suppressants snapped shut. And Loki staggered. The clearing was fire and smoke. Chitauri corpses littered the ground, their weapons sparking. The platform flickered, its glow fading as the suppressants pressed down. Loki knelt in the center, staff forced against the ground, his smirk thinner but still sharp. Steve stood over him, shield steady. Stark hovered above, visor down, repulsors primed. My soldiers ringed the field, rifles steady, silent. I walked closer, boots crunching against dirt. Calm. Steady. My voice was low. You're done. Loki's smirk widened faint. Am I? The ground shook again. Chapter 50, Portable Vault. Smoke lingered heavy across the clearing. The ridge was scarred from fire and weapons fire, black earth littered with Chitauri corpses. The half-built platform still pulsed faintly, alien steel glowing with the same energy as the cube. Loki stood at its center, staff gripped tight in his hand, blue light flickering along its blade. His smile was thin, sharp, smug despite the suppressants closing around him. Steve stood steady at the front, shield strapped tight, his stance unyielding. Stark hovered overhead, repulsors primed, visor down. My squads surrounded the field, rifles raised, their black armor gleaming in the pale light. Drones circled above, suppressants pressing harder, the hum loud in the air. I walked closer, boots crunching over dirt and ash. My voice was calm, clipped. Deploy the vault. 2 soldiers moved at once, hauling a reinforced container from the rear transport. The box hissed as it unfolded, metal walls snapping open, clamps locking, suppressants humming low. It was smaller than the facility vaults, portable but strong. Thick enough to hold a god, long enough to get him buried. Loki tilted his head, his smirk wider. You think a box will hold me? Steve's jaw tightened. It'll hold long enough. Stark chuckled, his voice sharp through the comms. Somebody remind the god of mischief he's not exactly batting 1,000 today. Loki raised his staff, blue light flaring. My squads fired instantly, suppressants slamming down around him, fields crackling. The light dimmed, forced back under the pressure. Loki snarled, his smirk faltering. I raised my rifle, my voice even. Box him. The soldiers surged forward, formation perfect. Suppressants hummed louder as emitters were driven into the ground, locking into place around the platform. The portable vault clamped wider, its steel doors yawning open with a hiss of suppressant vapor. Steve charged, his shield slamming aside the first strike of Loki's staff. Sparks flew as the shield absorbed the energy, Steve pushing hard, unyielding. Stark dove low, blasts hammering the ground around Loki, forcing him back step by step. Loki swung his staff, snarling, energy flaring wild. The suppressants pressed tighter, fields sparking against the glow. My soldiers advanced in rhythm, rifles spitting fire, their black armor steady as they closed the circle. I moved forward calm, every shot clean, precise. My voice cut through the comms. Push him. Into the box. The fight dragged across the clearing. Steve braced every strike, his shield ringing under each blow. Stark circled overhead, his blasts tearing through the last of the Chitauri trying to push through the suppressants. My squads pressed closer, their formation tightening, rifles thundering in perfect rhythm. Loki's smirk faltered further. His staff cracked against the suppressant fields, the glow dimming under the pressure. He lashed out harder, wild, but the fields smothered every flare. Steve slammed his shield forward, driving Loki back another step. Stark dropped low, blasting the ground at Loki's feet, forcing him toward the portable vault. My squads boxed him tighter, their rifles spitting precise bursts, their boots crunching closer. I stepped forward slow, calm, my voice even. Now. The soldiers surged, clamps snapping, the vault hissing open wider. Loki staggered back under Steve's shield and Stark's blasts, forced into the mouth of the container. The suppressants roared louder, pressing him inside, the glow of his staff dimming under the weight. He snarled, his smirk gone. You will regret this. I looked at him. Calm. Steady. No. The vault slammed shut. The suppressants roared, the seals locking tight. The steel walls clanged as the clamps closed, locking into place. The glow of Loki's staff flickered faint through the small reinforced window, then dimmed under the pressure. Steve exhaled slow, lowering his shield, his shoulders tight. Stark hovered above, his visor sliding back, smirk faint. Well. That's one god in a box. What's next, rabbits? Steve shot him a look. It's not over. I walked to the vault, boots heavy against steel. I stared through the reinforced glass, calm, even. My voice was low. Secure transport. Straight to New York. My soldiers moved instantly, hauling the vault onto the armored carrier, clamps locking it to the floor. Suppressants hissed steady, their hum loud in the chamber. The drones circled lower, scanning the field for stragglers. Steve stood by the ramp, shield on his arm, his eyes steady on the vault. Stark walked closer, his smirk thin, his gaze sharp. Fury's voice cracked over the comms, sharp, furious. That's Shield's prisoner. You don't get to box him. I keyed the line, my voice flat. He's ours now. Fury's voice grew colder. You're crossing a line. I looked at the vault, calm, final. Then I crossed it. The line went dead. We moved fast. The convoy rolled out, engines thundering as we pushed south. The portable vault rattled faintly inside the transport, suppressants roaring louder every time Loki's staff flared. The soldiers riding with it didn't blink, rifles steady, eyes locked on the glass. Steve sat across from me in the lead truck, shield across his knees. His voice was low, steady. You really think this will hold him? I looked at him. Calm. Long enough. He nodded once. Stark's voice crackled through comms. You know Fury's losing his mind right now, right? Shield doesn't like being cut out. I keyed the line, my tone flat. Not their call. Steve glanced at me. You're taking responsibility for this. I met his eyes. Even. Steady. I know. Steve nodded once. By dusk, the facility loomed ahead. The convoy rolled through the gates, transports rattling heavy as they pulled into the motor pool. The portable vault hissed as it was rolled down the ramp, suppressants humming louder as it entered the deeper fields of the base. The glow inside dimmed further, the staff's light almost gone. Banner's voice cracked over comms, hoarse but clear. I can feel it from here. The cube's resonance dipped. You did it. You actually boxed him. Steve followed the vault into the chamber, his shield steady, his gaze sharp. Stark strolled behind him, his smirk faint. My soldiers moved with perfect rhythm, hauling the vault toward the deeper containment wing. I walked at the front, boots heavy, calm, silent. The vault doors yawned wide, steel thicker than anything in the world, suppressants roaring from within. My squads rolled Loki's box inside, clamps snapping as it locked into the heart of the chamber. The doors hissed shut, bolts slamming deep into the walls. The hum grew louder. The glow dimmed. Loki was caged.